Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, July 9th. And if you would join me in pledging of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. We're going to start off with a moment of silence. Hanson has lost 4 dedicated employees in the last few weeks, and these are folks that really contributed to the fabric of our community. Our hearts go out to the families of election worker Mary Lyon, school teacher Sheila Ward, who was one of my daughter's absolute favorite teachers of all time, assistant to the school superintendent Laura Haas, and highway surveyor Robert Brown. And many of you know Bob. We certainly here on the board know him. Bob began his career with Hanson Highway in 2000 and worked his way through the ranks, following in his father's footsteps. In 2011, he was appointed as the highway surveyor, and Bob dedicated himself to his work and his crew. He took great pride in having the best roads in the region during the winter season. And you knew when you were in Hanson, because the minute you crossed over the line, it was like, oh, these roads are awesome. So I'm going to have a moment of silence, and I thank them all for their service. Okay, thank you. And one little additional announcement. On Sunday, the town of Hanson, along with the rest of the world, watched in awe as our own Samantha Muse helped the U.S. women's national soccer team make history with their first back-to-back World Cup titles after her team defeated the Netherlands 2-0 in Lyon, France. Midfielder Samantha Muse is the daughter of Bob and Melissa Muse. She grew up in Hanson and was a star player for Whitman Hanson High School. She earned numerous All-American accolades and led the Panthers to 4 league championships. She and her older sister, Christy, became the first sisters to represent the U.S. at a World Cup event in 2008. Sam's story is one of persistence and determination. She didn't make the roster for the 2016 Olympics, but was named as an alternate for the squad and then sustained a serious knee injury that sidelined her for the first half of 2018. But she bounced back from the injury and made the roster for the World Cup. There were no expectations that she would start until the day before the opener. That's when she got word that due to injuries sustained by her fellow teammates, a spot had opened up for her to start in midfield. The rest, as they say, is history. Sam got significant playing time during the 2019 World Cup and made an impact, scoring 2 goals and notching 3 assists, including in Sunday's second half. So it's no surprise if you drive around Hanson that you'll see all kinds of signs congratulating Sam and the rest of the team on their win. And while her win on Sunday was in and of itself amazing, the impact that Sam has made goes well beyond the field. She and her team have literally inspired girls all over the world. Their teamwork, joy of the game, and sheer athleticism were unparalleled and evident to everybody watching. But just as important is the fact that she and her team have used this platform to continue to advocate for gender pay equity, thus assuring that the effects of their win will be felt for generations to come. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the town of Hanson, I want to congratulate Sam and the rest of her team on their win. And please know that the whole town is literally bursting with pride at the success of our hometown girl, and we can't wait to see what you will do next. Mr. Bloss, I'm going to turn it over to you for announcements, and then we'll move on to our agenda.
Announcements. Hanson. The Treasurer Collector's Office informs residents that the first and second quarter real estate and personal property tax bills for fiscal year 2020 were mailed on Friday, June 28th. Bills will be due on August 1st and November 1st, 2019. Taxpayers who have not received a bill, contact the Treasurer Collector's Office at 781-293-2422. The town clerk would like to remind dog owners that dog licenses are now available. Fees are $15 or $10 for neutered dogs. A current rabies certificate is required in order to license your dog. For questions, please contact the town clerk at 781-293-2772. Hanson Public Library Foundation will hold a trivia night on Wednesday, July 31st at Camp Kiwanee Lodge. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. Questions begin at 7:30 p.m. Cost $120 per table, up to 8 people, $15 per person, and we'll seat you with someone else. Popcorn and water will be provided. Feel free to bring your own snacks. Entry forms are available online at hansonlibrary.org. The Hanson 200th Anniversary Committee will be holding a photo contest for the 2020 calendar. We are looking for the best photos of Hanson. There is a maximum of 5 entries per person. Winners will receive a gift from the committee. Please submit these photos by July 31st, 2019 to Matt Dyer at mdyer@hanson-ma.gov. The 200th Anniversary Committee is holding a Wampanoag Tribe exhibit kickoff dinner on Thursday, July 25th at 7 at the Needles Lodge. The catered barbecue dinner is $25 per person. Tickets are available via Facebook, www.facebook.com/Hanson200th 200th Anniversary. Whitman Hanson Kingston WHK Hockey is sponsoring Bruins Academy Learn to Play for boys and girls born between 2010 and 2014. Registration is $140, included a full set of CCM equipment to keep, professional personalized fitting, 4 weeks on-ice instruction by certified coaches. To register, go to bostonbruins.com/learn-to-play. I just want to add, too, that it has been great fun for the last 2 weeks name-dropping Sam and Christie. I've gotten so much street cred from having known them in Hanson, so thank you, everybody. Volunteers are needed for the following committees: 200th Anniversary, Capital Improvement, Cultural Council, Disabilities, Economic Development, Finance, Highway Building Committee, Historical Commission, Memorial Day Patriot Observance, Memorial Day Field Trustees, School Repair and Zoning Board Alternate. Applications for appointment and info on the committees are available on the town website. Upcoming meetings: Community Preservation is Wednesday, July 10th at 7 p.m. The Energy Committee is also Wednesday, July 10th at 7 p.m. And the next 2 selectmen's meetings are Tuesday, July 23rd at 7 p.m. and Tuesday, August 20th at 7 p.m.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we begin, seeing how we have a full audience here, I always like to point out we have extra copies of everything that we're looking at up here on the front of the table. So if we have anyone that really wants to follow along, feel free to come grab a packet.
Thank you,
No problem.
Okay, we're moving along. Our first up on new business is a discussion with Impressed LLC regarding possible siting of marijuana cultivator and marijuana product manufacturing facility at 15 Commercial Way, Hanson, Mass., including discussion of potential marijuana host agreement. On our agenda tonight is a discussion with Impressed LLC. They are a company that is proposing to locate a marijuana cultivation and manufacturing facility in the Hanson Industrial Park. Our current bylaws ban the sale of retail marijuana in Hanson. Our current zoning bylaws also ban the sale of retail marijuana throughout the town, but allow other non-retail marijuana establishments to locate in the zone that includes the Hanson Industrial Park. In order to receive a license to operate in Hanson, Impressed LLC must meet all applicable local regulations in addition to the applicable Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, CCC, regulations. One of the CCC requirements is the execution of a host community agreement, which is a contract negotiated between a municipality and a marijuana establishment that includes all terms necessary for the marijuana establishment to operate in the municipality. Tonight's discussion is the first that the Hanson Board of Selectmen has had with the Impressed LLC. The purpose of our discussion tonight is to hear from the applicant about their overall business plan, as well as to discuss some of the areas of concern that we want to make sure are addressed generally, but are also included in the host community agreement, such as security, water conservation, pest management, odor mitigation, and waste disposal. To that end, we requested that in addition to the owners of Impressed LLC, that their engineer attend this meeting as well as their attorney, which I believe you guys are all here. After we have heard from the applicant and had the board's questions answered, we hope to take questions from those in attendance. Again, the first part will be focused on answering the board's questions, and then I will let everybody know when we're opening it up to the public in general. And with that, I will turn it over to the folks from Impressed. And if you can introduce yourselves and whatever works for you. Yep.
Hi everybody, my name is Ralph Greenberg, and I'm one of the founders of the Impressed LLC facility. My background is used lab and scientific equipment, so I'm pretty involved with biotechnology and the understanding of how a facility should work with cleanliness and odor management and some of the pest management scenarios that we'll talk about. But my goal is to have a odorless, clean, and secure facility to be proud of in the town of Hanson. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be presenting this information as much as I can give you, and then a few others will come up. But my role in the everyday experience of the business model will be handling the operations, the facilities, making sure the equipment's going to work properly, handling all the vendors, and the purchasing and the acquisition of the technology and the certain supplies that we'll need for the day-to-day operation. I guess more than anything, that's what I'll be doing, and other than my sales at the end of the day, once we grow our product, I'll be the sales manager to sell our product as well to the different buyers out there. I'm not sure if that's, I stop there and then.
Sure. Hey, my name is Christopher Ray. I'm with the Hoban Law Group. I also serve as general counsel to Impressed LLC. I've been an attorney in the cannabis space for about 3 years, with the Hoban Law Group for about two and a half years now. So my role in this process starts with helping to shepherd Impressed LLC through the licensing process. That includes the Cannabis Control Commission's application, as well as Hanson's application and compliance with the local rules and the state rules. And then after that process is over, I will likely continue to serve in a general counsel capacity, helping to keep the company compliant. Thank you.
Hi guys, I can't speak off the dome like that, so nice to meet everyone. My name is Allie Greenberg. My day-to-day with Impress will be the cultivation director. I will be responsible for all daily management tasks, licensing and regulations keep up, and the report and sales goals. We will hire 10 full-time employees when we can. The town has first priority. If we want to be embedded into the mainstream, we want that positive image. So our commitment to ensure the state-of-the-art facility is properly installed. It will remove any odor that may otherwise escape our facility. Furthermore, it is of our utmost importance to us and good neighbors to properly create a discrete location. To the end, we will be following the tight guidelines set forth by the Cannabis Control Commission. And thanks again for having us.
Good afternoon. Excuse my appearance. My name is Paul Dean. I am the owner and operator of a company called ICG. I'm a design engineer and a mechanical contractor. I've currently done about 16 of these locations, cultivation and dispensary-wise, and I'm working for these gents here to establish this facility as well. Much more to put to that.
That's great, thanks. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions for you.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us. My name is Shahram Moghadam. I'm a dentist in Weymouth, a local dentist. My part in this is financing and my connection to research that that's going on at Harvard, and pain management and anxiety. That's how I got involved in that. Thank you.
Okay, so who's going to tell us about the issues that we'd like to hear about? I think I'm kind of looking at you because I feel like they may be engineering related, but water usage and conservation, pesticide management, those types of things.
Can I speak about the water first?
Whoever has the
Yes, the water.
Yep.
So we know the water is a concern, and candidly what we'll do is we're going to hire a local company called Indian Head Water to supply us all the water. We'll have a tanker staged in our facility. It'll be removed every 7 to 10 days or filled, depending on what the logistics are with the company. But we'll be using outside water. We won't be using any of the water from the town of Hanson other than our bathrooms and our regular daily usage stuff for personal items, what have you. But when it comes to the cultivation, we won't be using any of the Hanson water. And other than that, Paul can answer most of the questions when it comes to discharges and things. That's the water consumption.
So can we talk about waste disposal, pest management, what types of chemicals, if any, you're going to be using, those types of things?
So, majority of the chemicals used to wash down a clean room is going to be hydrogen peroxide. That's the only liquid form of fluids used, other than dry chemical to clean the floors, walls. And that's just within the room space. And on the exterior, just traffic-wise, it's just hydrogen peroxide wash down. It's both prevent cross-contamination between all that solution is always picked from the floor. It's never going to any special waste program or stored anywhere. It's basically from the point of use disposed of into a separate holding tank. That tank would be picked up by a outside vendor and would be a log kept of the time, how much material was picked up during the week and what was hauled off. And they would have a record on the other end of the counter.
Okay, and similarly, disposal of, any of the product that you're not using, so stems and all of that stuff. Can you
So-
talk about the waste disposal of,
Right.
nutrients, plants, parts that aren't being used,
Right. So, same thing with the nutrient solution. So, the feed schedule is usually around 3 to 4 feeds a day, which keeps a minimum amount of runoff. So, towards the life cycle of the plant, entering the last phases, they'll have an extra amount of runoff at that point, and that runoff will be captured. Most of it will be filtered and reused as a flushing agent for the plant, and then what isn't is stored again in another 55-gallon drum and disposed separately of the cleaning material by an outside vendor.
Okay.
Stems, waste material that's left over gets put into a container outside the building, and that's also picked up by an outside vendor. It's not disposed of any other way.
Is that ground up before it's put into the container?
It's not ground up, but it's mostly broken into smaller pieces,
Okay.
manageable pieces that won't be issues for them to remove. Usually, in most cases, they take the container with them, so the container stays locked. No one goes in after the material's put in, and then the town, the supplier will come pick that container and leave the container for the next deposit.
And it's my understanding that there's very tight controls on this, so you're
Right.
gonna know how much is leaving your facility in the way of waste, and you're going to have a log from the person picking it up, so there's no chinks in the armor on that. And similarly, within the facility, when you're growing, the various stages, and I'm sorry if I'm not using the technical terms, I really don't know the technical terms, but as you move along the life cycle of the plant, there's very tight protocols that are in place in terms of, how much material is moving from room to room.
Correct.
And how many what do you call the rooms? Grow rooms, or? what do you-
It would be considered, there's a vegetative room
Okay.
and a flower room. All of it is, of course, cultivation, but those are the two stages, veg and flower. There is an earlier stage where they have like a germination process where there's clones taken or seeds, and those are raised as baby plants and go on to be larger veg plants in the process. But everything's tagged and all have to be accounted for. Even plants that die have to be recorded on a log and submitted to the CCC.
So can you talk about the seed to product tracking, which is quite fascinating? I've read about this on the CCC website. The requirement to track, literally, you can track, like this seed that I grew,
Well, it starts at the vendor, so for
Yeah.
purchase, that is recorded, a copy will go to CCC, CCC will record it. They'll show up and actually, in some cases at the beginning, do a site visit and actually go through your product before you even start the process. And they'll track it, the growth from that point on, because it's a process actually germinating the seed, get roots, and then growing the actual stem plant. And at that point, you could lose that plant at any given point in time of that process. So it's all recorded, and whatever ones make it are the ones that they're allowed to have, and that's the count that's always kept. And then the next process happens, and it's set in steps.
but constantly check and balance, check and balance.
Right, and there's a constant feed to them in order for them to watch the process and workers that are accessing those plants and what chemicals are being used and what time they're being used, the amounts in which they're being used. It's watched through CCC, and again, records have to be kept. The plants are even moving out of the space from a small vegetative state to a larger state. The medium, in fact, they switch out because they actually have to replant the plant from a smaller pot to a larger pot. They even report the amount of soil used or the medium they're growing in usage, so they can track what waste is leaving the facility as well. It's not just the stem plant, it's actually the root ball and the medium being used.
And now, are you using pesticides?
No.
Okay, so how do you manage things like insects or
So
rodents
it's
or?
a decontamination room. If in the event that you do have insects, you could try treating with natural remedies like they have like ladybugs, or they have a non-chemical spray that can be sprayed like an oil that can be applied to the plant. And if that doesn't successfully get rid of them, you have to actually get rid of the plant.
Because you're not really permitted under the CCC to use actual pesticides,
No,
right?
none
Okay.
whatsoever. And it's tested, so if you're using it, they'll find it. Even metals, heavy metals, they test for. So if any of that occurs at any time, they'll go back in the records and try to figure out where that batch was, and that batch cannot be used, that was destroyed, and recorded as well, that it was destroyed.
Okay, and another thing that has come up in a variety of ways is, product, like let's say you've got some kind of mold or mildew, whatever.
Right.
What happens? What do you do with it?
It gets destroyed.
Okay.
Or it can be used to be processed into an oil.
Okay.
That's the only acceptable times. And if that's the case, we would have to present a contract made between the processing company and the wholesaler and then show that exchange.
That they know that that's what they're buying?
That's where it's going, that's
Yeah.
what they're buying, and the amount in which they're receiving, and what they're paying for it, so all that's tracked as well.
Okay, so we've talked about pest management, water conservation, odor mitigation, which is a big concern of people, that they don't want the skunk smell, that they're gonna drive by, they're gonna smell the skunk smell, or if I live a half a mile away or a mile away, I'm gonna be able to smell it. So talk to us
Okay,
about
so
that.
that process happens through the HVAC system and within the space. So what happens is that the room itself is a pressurized entity, and the hall corridors and common area is a negative. So any smell that's in the room is usually being processed through the HVAC equipment, which has a HEPA 15 filter, a carbon filter, and then a injection of ionized air. So almost like an ozone generator. And what that does is basically, it attaches to the odors or the
Does it kind of neutralize it?
it neutralizes the
Okay.
smell. It's for also, it's not only just to keep the smell out, but also to sterilize the ductwork and what have you, the equipment that it's passing through. So it's a three-pass system. Anything that makes it outside of that is then taken in by the exterior or common area HVAC that also holds a ultraviolet light and MER 15 filter and carbon, and that passes through. So it's another pass of protection.
So it's kind of a little building within a building type
Right.
of a scenario?
It's always a building within a building,
Okay.
absolutely.
And of course, you've got the best of intentions, but let's say your HVAC fails or we lose electricity, like what's the backup plan?
Well, the backup plan is still, again, HVAC. So if, say, the system fails, there's some redundancy built into the system itself. So it operates on, say, one blower fan that runs all the time. In some cases, both, there'll be two in the system that help one another work the space. At any given time, one fails, the other one's big enough to take up the slack from the other. And then, like I said, again, there's tons of redundancy built in that as far as moving air from one unit to the next. The next unit can stage up and take on the slack of the other unit. That's more or less a protocol built in so they don't lose the crop. So by doing that, you won't have that odor escape as well.
And now, what about fire protection and security? I don't know who can answer, is that still you?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm not asking for all these questions. but-
So fire protection, in this case, I've already worked with Susan Connors with the Mass Health Department and have devised a plan to use a nitrogen and CO2 mix disbursement, so it's per room. That's outside of any sprinkler system or whatnot. And what it does is basically contains any fire to that space. It's external to that room. The paneling used has a 5-hour fire rate on it, so the chance of it making the building, it would probably burn everything up in the room before it actually penetrate the walls itself. And then we have that active system that purges any oxygen within the space without damaging the plants as well. So there's no water or any chemical that actually makes contact with that plan. And then, but even in event of something happening, and then discharge happens, all those plants have to be removed from the space, they have to be tested before they go back in. And if they don't pass the test from the CCC, then they have to be disposed of. But it's been pretty thorough as far as the nitrogen and the CO2 being enough to take care of the fire and not damage the plants.
Great. And security.
Security. So we have a total of 64 cameras internally. And the reason for that is we have the CCC has to track the employees within the space. Some people have access to some parts of the building, some don't. In the event that one makes it into that space, they have to identify them. Everyone wears a badge, and they have to clearly be able to see that through the camera at any given time, no matter what process they are, except for restrooms. That's your only safe spot in the building. They're checked in, checked out on a daily basis. Breaks are taken within the space. They're not allowed to leave the facility for any reason other than to go home. No congregating outside. Exterior-wise, it's usually about 16 cameras outside. Then that's, with the camera, we have to have ample lighting. Even though the camera has to have night vision, they require an additional light for every camera in order to clearly identify ones around the perimeter. And as far as everyone entering and exiting the building, there's a cam there. They have to ring a doorbell, they have to show their badge, and they enter a area called a man trap, where then again they have to show their badge again to a security officer that will then allow them to enter the employee break room / locker room, where they'll change from the day into the facility to do the work.
Now, are there plans to, and again, I don't know if it's you, then great, but what are the plans as far as, is it going to be open 24 hours a day? And if not 24 hours a day, will there be security guards? Like, can you, I don't want, I know you don't want to tell us all of your security plans.
We have
you don't-
recommended actually 8 to 8,
Okay,
Monday through Saturday.
okay. And so after hours, talk to me about an emergency. Somebody tries to break in or some alarm goes off, or like what's going to happen?
Well, there's a trigger to 2 people right away, which is one, the CCC will obviously get it right away because they have a direct feed. And then another one is for it's a shunt to the fire system. So in the event something happens, the fire department's going to be the first to get the signal anyway from the call box. And then whatever is selected person that actually manages the facility will be the next person to be notified. And like I said, that gives everyone out ample opportunity to get to the space. There's any other protocol that's in place for that. There is safety measures for as far as people breaking in. Say if someone does make it through the front door and beyond the security and into the space, there's a series of panic buttons that are also placed throughout the building at every entry and exit point of every room, that if an employee's in there and sees someone, they can actually hit the panic. And what it does is it opens the exterior doors, releases the magnetic lock from the exterior, but the interior doors lock in. So they get locked in the space they're in a sense. They can't be attacked by whoever's there. The vault area is just totally secure. They can't break into that. And the police department is notified. Once again, the CCC and the directed person in charge of the facility.
And are the cameras sensitive enough to pick up on movement, heat changes? Well, like what are
So they're basically anything up to the size of a cat will be picked up. But then it's like a 360-degree bend on the outside. Internally, that's why there's so many cameras, because they have to be a high visible lens, because you have to capture people's faces and their badges while they're walking through the facility. Those are directed at one, if you have a corridor and you go into a second corridor, you have 6 points of contact within that space. Heat-wise, we're not required to do that as far as body temperature.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was like.
It should be enough. It's really
Radiation
from 1 point
type
to
of
right.
thing.
I would definitely shake the person's hand that was able to get past that point to even actually get to the vaults or anything. So all the vaults are actually, the ceilings are 8 inches thick poured concrete, cement wall, bar, and backfill have to be pinned to the floor in which they're sitting on. And then there's a fire rated door. It's almost a 3-layer door that goes on the vault itself. And again, that has a panic button within it and 4 cameras on all 4 points of the safe itself.
Wow. Guys, questions?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Jim, Mr. Hickey, go ahead.
Thanks. Paul, I'm interested in the waste. You say it goes into a locked container.
Right.
And then that container is taken off the facility.
Right.
And they drop another one.
Correct.
Okay, so you're gonna have at least 2, if not 3 containers, if you have one for the employees for their,
The common waste, the common waste is never equipped with that, because the only person that would have access is actually the main contact of the building, whoever manages the building, and the service company.
okay.
So at the time in which they do disposal, he has to be present in order to put that material in the container. And again, it's weighed, scaled, thrown in the container. So, and there's cameras watching that as well. And there's a log that has to be submitted. Every month on waste, that's usually when you submit all your logs. And you keep a hard copy on the site, and then one of those is CCC requires every month to have that submitted. And then the service company, which is picking up the material, also has to provide their record showing they took it and what their disposal method was.
And that material is kept inside the building, or is it outside?
It's outside.
Okay.
But at that point, it's strict. There's no chance of odor or anything of that nature. And it's always in a locked fenced area. The fence, we're allowed to use chain link, but it has to be privacy fenced in order so it's not visible to anyone, even if it's behind a building where no one should be behind. It has to be not visible to the public in any way.
Okay?
Are you guys gonna do extractions too? Like the,
We're not going for that license at the moment. Just
We
cultivation.
hope to get our manufacturing license, but first and foremost, cultivation is our first goal.
All right, so right now, for the purposes of this discussion, we're talking about cultivation.
Only that.
how many
Yeah.
grow rooms,
Go ahead.
sorry, how many grow rooms are you gonna have?
6.
Was it approximate square feet of each of the room?
1100.
Who will your customers be? Who will you guys sell to? Like other retail shops or?
Yeah, licensed retail shops in Massachusetts.
Or other
And
extractors.
again, there's a contract that has to be made between the retailer and the wholesaler. And that contract sits with the CCC as well. So because they're trying to track purchases. And everything's weighed in, weighed out. So if they come in to purchase, say, they put in an order for, say, 24 pounds of a certain product. That product is then taken out of the vault, labeled, weighed, and then a log kept of that. And it has to be done in a certain area, that's your packaging area, which CCB watches. And when there's an armed service guard that comes, there's no like retailer showing up in their car picking this stuff up. It's actually an armed guard that picks it up as well. They have to reweigh it before they take it, sign off on it, and leave with it. And when they get to the retail space, they actually have to have it weighed again, sign in, and receive from. And then the payments are done outside of that. It's not done at the point of transaction. It's done.
That was another of my question. So the payments are done electronically, or
Right.
they just?
There's no cash exchange at that point. It would always be electronic.
So you won't
So you
have
can track.
cash at the facility?
No.
Okay.
What are your estimated expected revenue for the first year?
10 million
10 million.
after the first year of our harvests.
And you expect that to increase the second year?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, manufacturing would increase that number as well.
You mentioned testing a couple times. You guys do your own testing right there, or there's a CCC there?
You have to do a third-party testing. You're not allowed to do. Well, you can do your own testing for your own purposes. Bragging rights, or just to prove that your product is clean. But you would have to use a third party that's not tied to you in any way.
Okay.
So what's that process look like?
So that process, it usually happens within, well, so I haven't been involved in the back part of it. Usually by that time I'm out of the picture. I'm not gaining access back to the space anymore. So from what I understand is that the CCC will come in and select a date before harvest and take some of the product and give it to, say, a third party that's chosen, that both parties agree upon, and they'll do the test. They'll get the results first, and then the actual wholesaler will get their results last.
But you guys will be doing your own testing all along?
Quantitatively.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's not required. They do the
Right,
testing
right, yeah.
For their own benefit.
Last question for me, will you allow your employees to use the product while working?
Absolutely not.
Because again, CCC regulations, they can't use it on the property, they can't be sitting in their car, having a good time before they go into work. It's very strict, the rules with that is very, very strict. They have to be 10 miles off the property in order to use any product of their own from the facility. It wouldn't be from the facility, they would have to buy it from a retailer, there's no
Right,
retail there, so they would have to purchase it. And if they brought it to work with them, they brought it to work with them. If they caught with it, then they're
They only have a 20-minute break, I mean.
Well, the 20-minute break has to be within the facility. You
Yeah.
can't have it outside the building as well, so they're still being watched at that point anyway. So there's no consumable within 10 miles of the building.
Mr.
As an employee.
This is a two-pronged question, one for you guys and one for Kate. The first question is, do you guys have a maintenance plan in place? And if so, are these maintenance plan items assigned to a certain someone? Because what I don't want to see is the facility gets up and running, if we approve it, and then 5 years later, we have a problem with the HVAC system because we didn't do preventative maintenance. So my question is, do you guys have a maintenance schedule? If so, are those tasks assigned to your employees or in your business plan?
It would be, like myself, I'm a mechanical contractor as well, so I would have a group that I would offer them a service plan, and they're more than willing to go with me or anyone at that point. But the program would be every month. They have to change filters. There'll be a cleaning, washing of the coils. This is just for the longevity of the equipment, not so much for odor propagation. It would be more for the warranty on the equipment. If they fail to do that, they lose warranty on the equipment. It's not cheap equipment. So no one wants to be replacing a $30,000 VFD fan and a piece of equipment. So,
And I'll be handling the preventative maintenance advising for who we'll deal with, whether it's the watering system or the laboratory and testing equipment that we do in our own in-house testing for. But I'll be handling all the maintenance scheduling and the preventative maintenance
Your
of
facilities.
the facility. I'll be the facilities manager and the operations manager at that point.
All right. And then my question for Kate is, worst case scenario, the HVAC, fails and we're having some issues with odor or something along that line. What do we have in our back pocket for the town to approach and address these situations?
So you have a number of tools in your armory. So one of those tools is the license that's issued by the Board of Selectmen, and it can, if there's an issue, it could be a maintenance issue, or it could be a security issue, or any other kind of issue. You can bring them in and say, we're getting reports of this or complaints of this. What's your plan? How are you going to remedy it? If they can't remedy it, there is always a revocation process. Same thing with a special permit, which is issued by the planning board here in Hanson. And they're going to have a list of site controls. And part of the condition, I'm sure, that the planning board will impose on the special permit would be a maintenance plan, for example, for the HVAC system, or an adequate HVAC system to deal with what's particular to marijuana. So if there's a violation of one of those conditions, you can be brought before the planning board. Same thing with the Board of Health. The Board of Health has statutory authority under Chapter 111, and that can deal with health issues. And for example, odor and noise are one of the issues that there are two of the issues rather, that the Board of Health deal with routinely. So courts see boards of health come before them routinely on these kinds of nuisance complaints. And it's whether or not by a reasonable person's standard, if you're hypersensitive and you can smell things that the average person's not smelling, it's not going to be a claim that would be taken up by the court. But if it's something that's interfering with someone's life because, for example, that unnamed entity in forget where the heck it was, somewhere in Massachusetts, a medical facility where they have huge odor problem.
Neta.
They could, what is it called?
Neta.
Neta.
Yeah.
They could have been brought in by the Board of Health because it was so overpowering that it was detrimental to the neighbors. So same thing for noise. If it's, you know, if you routinely hear noise and it's bothersome, it affects your health. So the Board of Health has strong statutory authority to enforce.
Thank you.
Anything else, Matt?
That's all I have.
Mr. Bloss?
Paul, did you say you've done 16 facilities or been involved in 16 so far? So in any of those facilities, have there been events or issues that the CCC specifically asked you to address or reassess, or have you changed any protocols or any physical part of a plant because of the CCC directed you to do so?
In this case, in Fall River and Uxbridge, I had to install a separate point of use generator, standby generator for their servers. So most places they were using a backup battery pack. It's good for 8 hours. At this point, they felt that it was not sufficient enough to sustain the coverage because there's a lot of data that can be lost to the server rack. So I'm installing generators now to back that up. Other than that, my protocol, what I put in place has been satisfactory to this point.
And are you still involved in any of these 16 facilities with maintenance contracts or anything?
Out of 16, they chose to stay on. Otherwise, they had other contractors within the area that was competent enough to take care of it. And were able to, after directed, knew where to get the supplies to perform the maintenance and whatnot. I don't impose them to stay with me. I mean, I actually don't want to keep the contracts because it's quite busy because I have so many more that I'm doing now. So there's like another 3 that I'm doing in Oxford alone. They're popping up like faster than I can do them, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Kate, I had a question for you. One of the things we had talked about at our last meeting when we were just broadly talking about this was the notion that Paul is extremely competent and he's answering all of our questions, but how do we know that Paul knows what he's talking about, or that we could have a comfort level with what Paul's doing? Can you talk about peer review, what that is, how we can do that, and how we can kick the tires and what we're being told?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's always the fear with anyone, right? It could be the lawyer, it could be the engineer, that they're the advocate for the applicant, right? But the measure to protect the town and ensure that we have the most protection we can by law is peer review process. And it's a common process. It's not particular to marijuana. It could be for traffic because you're having a strip mall put in or something like that. What happens in the peer review process is the town engages an engineer, which is paid for by the applicant. So the town actually doesn't put on any money for it. And that independent engineer takes a look at the figures that the engineer of the applicant ran, ensures that it was done to the reasonable standard of engineering standards, applied all the right factors, and put in all the appropriate, estimates or whatnot to ensure that their figures are actually what they're attesting to be. So not only do you have an engineer who's got a license and is putting his name and stamping his stamp on the plans, but you have our own engineer who double checks that and ensures that everything is appropriately done.
That's one of the things I assume would happen anyway. Every time I've done, I have sat down at some point and went over with the town engineer.
I was going to ask you, I'm sure you're familiar with that process.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just
absolutely.
coming along and second, kind of taking.
Well, no, everyone checks it.
Yeah.
They check my design from start to finish.
Yeah.
Even National Grid has like 30 engineers go over my plans and make sure the energy usage is where it should be, and we're not over consuming in our area.
That's actually a great question. So, if you sneeze in Hanson, we lose electricity. That's really, I'm exaggerating, but not really. I'm just hoping that you've taken that into consideration. You've been talking to National Grid about your usage and, okay. All
I
right.
have the same situation in Uxbridge. Their power supply isn't somewhat adequate because of some of the larger companies that have already moved in, like BJ's warehouses in that area, larger manufacturers that actually consume more power. And I came in operating less than a third of what they're using. And for the size space, it's 30,000 square foot facility that operated at a third of the cost of something that was double the size. They receive, like the clients receive energy credit for meeting those requirements, being energy wise.
And that's something, Chairman Cameron, that's something that the CCC is really paying attention to, all those points that you hit on, security naturally, right? But energy consumption, water consumption, what you're doing with your waste, they have really strict regulations, and as a matter of sure fact, they just put out draft regulations for draft amendments to the regulations, and it's increasing the responsibility of the purveyors to ensure that they're more eco-friendly, given that they will be using a lot of energy.
Yeah, I noticed that the CCC has guidelines on practically everything I asked you about, pest management, water conservation, all that stuff. So it sounds like you're very familiar with those. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to questions from the audience. Because we follow the Roberts Rules of Order, all questions will go through me as the chair to the appropriate party. If you're asking a question, please stand and state your name and address. In the interest of time, I ask that your questions be brief and that you only ask questions others haven't already asked. Preference will be given to those who have not already asked a question. Questions will be limited to the areas we are discussing tonight, such as their business plan, security, water conservation, pest management, odor mitigation, and waste disposal. I want to make it clear tonight, to those attending tonight, that we will not be discussing the legality, morality, or safety of marijuana usage. Those are issues beyond the scope of the Hanson Board of Selectmen and would be more appropriately addressed directly to your legislator or the Cannabis Control Commission. So with that, I will open it up to the floor. I'm sorry.
Someone else raising it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Go ahead. Annette Benato, 72 Brookside Drive. This is for the town council. So why is there this assumption that we as the town of Hanson have to sign this host agreement with Impress LLC?
Oh, please do, yeah.
So there is no assumption
Oh,
that you have to.
so there's no legal obligation that Hanson has to go into this agreement with Hanson?
To clarify, what would be the downside of us saying no to Impressed LLC without rationale?
Well, okay. So, to be frank, there is a Superior Court case that came out, I want to say, 6 months ago on the issue of host community agreements. Maybe it was even a little longer, I'm not sure when it came out. City of Salem. And they refused to enter into a host community agreement with a marijuana establishment. The marijuana establishment sued, and the Superior Court said, and let me take a step back. In that particular instance, the city had imposed a limitation on the number of marijuana establishments that were allowed in the city. And the body, I don't know if it was the city council, I don't know who it was, but anyway, the person, I think it was the city council, was the body that was entitled to execute a host community agreement, decided not to go with this marijuana purveyor. And the marijuana purveyor sued and said that the city council didn't have the right to determine who they were going to enter into a contract with or not. And they said that was really the CCC's job. And the court said no, because entering into any kind of contract is a negotiation between willing parties. So you have to be willing. So theoretically, you may not enter into a host community agreement with a marijuana purveyor. Now, in that instance, the distinction between that city rather, and the town of Hanson was the numerical limitation imposed. I'm not sure if the court would come out the same way in this circumstance, but we can say that contracting generally must be between willing parties. The difference here is the town meeting spoke, and I was at several of the town meetings where they stopped a moratorium, for example, of marijuana establishments. They accepted zoning of all marijuana establishments by 2/3 majority. The town meeting ultimately changed its mind and prohibited marijuana retailers, but still marijuana establishments are allowed in the town. So the Board of Selectmen is essentially negotiating with a seemingly responsible party to execute what the town meeting told them to do. And that's the best answer I can give you.
I mean, like, I know the town of Plymouth has refused, a couple of purveyors because they chose not to go into business with them. It was their choice. Like, they have 4 licenses, they've only filled 2 of them.
Yeah.
So there is that local control that we've kind of talked about.
There is local control, for sure.
Okay.
823 East Washington Street. I know with legal issues, things can get very expensive. And if for some reason the town of Hanson has a problem with litigator, who pays the legal fees to fight if you want to fight something?
So, like any other entity that comes into a town, you pay your lawyers, and that's just the law, not only in Massachusetts, but generally across the nation, that every person or town or entity pays for its own attorney's fees. But what we like to do as lawyers, and with the help of peer review, is to ensure that it's the best facility possible to short circuit the possibilities of having a problem in the future. But like anything, your local bar, there can be fights at the local bar, and you bring them in for a compliance check before the Board of Selectmen, you pay my fees if I'm to attend. If there's a fire and you have to tear down a building, you pay my fees. So it's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
I will note that on the fire, and I will say, I've given you guys a bit of latitude. I was kind of clear about the subjects that we were going to be talking about, which was all of the, mitigation, pest management, all that stuff. But in the interest of you guys being here and being vested and being interested, I have given you latitude, but I have no intention of going off the rails on this. But I do want to mention that in the case of the having tear it down, isn't there a bond requirement that? Okay.
Yeah. So for closure and cleanup, for example, there's a bond requirement by the CCC, and in the host community agreements that I've negotiated, I've actually included the bond a second time. So to ensure that if something happened, we had to close, they had to do a full cleanup, and there wouldn't be product that's left in the building. It wouldn't be the town's problem. So through the host community agreement, and that's the real benefit of the host community agreement, is to try to push a lot of that risk over to the marijuana establishment, which is something you can't do with another company because they don't have host community agreements. So we try to push as much as we can off onto the marijuana establishment.
Any other questions? Just please stand and state your name.
Phil Clements, 46 Main Street. I was listening, and there were several different sorts of chemicals or materials mentioned. I know that early on, the general assurance was that we won't use chemicals. Well, we heard tonight that they will be using extensive amounts of hydrogen peroxide, which is a very widely used disinfectant for many things. Just curious what quantities would be used, how they would be stored, and secondary, because that's a safety question, that whether you are an employee there, and with 10 employees or more, you're subject to OSHA, so you have a communication standard for that. But also anyone responding to an emergency in the building needs to know about that. And just to put all 3 on the table, another thing was, you mentioned you wish to do extractions. Extractions to me sounds like an organic...
Excuse me, Mr. Clements, they're actually not applying for an extraction license.
Well, we heard
They're saying at some point in the future they may.
Well, we heard that said by Ralph several times.
Right, but all that is on the table right now, all that they are applying for is cultivation. He's saying at some point he'd like to come before us, and at the point that they do, then we'll talk about what we'll have a discussion about that, and,
Okay.
you know.
Fair enough. The other thing is, and maybe this is future too, if you have, if you want to prepare for power outages, whether it's something local or something regional, like we've had some whole northeast part of the U.S. blackouts in our lifetimes, wondering what the run time would be of the facility. What is the planned emergency response coverage? Would it be a matter of hours, days, weeks? Let's say we had an ice storm that took down things. Just curious whether it's battery backup or a fuel-powered generator, what the runtime would be. And if it's a fuel-powered generator, it would be natural gas, propane, or fuel oil, and what quantities would be stored on site to accomplish the run times that you want.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Paul, I'm guessing it's going to be you answering these. So the first question was the hydrogen peroxide, safety, storage, disposal. Talk to us about it.
So, in actuality, the chemicals used for the cleaning of their pots and trays in which the plants sit in, it's dictated by the amount of area that they're going to be using. So I can't really answer how many parts per gallon of water that's going to be used, but it's always going to be within an acceptable level because that's monitored as well. So they have to record how much they have on site and how much they're using through the course of actually a weekly basis. And at any point it's excessive, the CCC will actually see that in their log reports. There's actually a cleaning report that has to be kept as well. There's a numerous amount of logs have to be kept for the operation of the facility.
I think Mr. Clement's concern was, the fire safety. So Jerry is our fire chief, so if his guys show up, how are they going to know where it is? How is it going to be stored? Is it going to be secured?
There is a chemical room for cleaners only. That's separate, far from any of the nutrients used for the plants themselves. It's always kept in a dark, cool room. It is possibly exhausted, and that's actually the only part of the building that's actually exhausted. There's 4 times a day air exchange for the common areas, so the air quality is met. So as far as the risk of that explosion, that's still in a fireproof room as well. Any storage containing areas, if it's product, meaning marijuana or cleaning, they have to meet the same standard. So they would actually be like a mini vault.
Oh, okay. So they're in a secured kind of, okay.
Exactly. They're segregated from everything else, but they're always beefed up in a sense to stand any other fire, because the rooms themselves have a 5-hour fire rate.
Okay, and so that brings us to the second question, which I had asked earlier, but I don't think we really did get an answer. So what happens if there's a catastrophic failure of electricity, which will happen because it's Hanson? What is the backup plan?
So once the power plan has been determined, I haven't done electrical load yet because we haven't made it to that point. But generally, like I have that facility in Uxbridge, I have a 3,000 amp diesel-powered generator that sits on site with a full switchover, a transfer switch that switches the whole building over in the event of power loss. That holds a 500-gallon tank underneath the actual generator that sits on top of it. It's got a 10-day runtime, 100% duty cycle, and it can run for 10 solid days on the fuel that's in that tank. But at that point, you can always have fuel delivered anytime within that point to compensate for what's lost. There's alarms on that.
And so that's an automatic
switch over.
Okay.
No one has to be there for it. It's got a 90-second changeover from the loss of power, sensing through the actual main gear that's coming in. So it's very little downtime within 90 seconds. You're back up and running.
And who is alerted when there's a power outage? Like, what's the?
It would be the manager, and obviously the CCC will see it because they'll know that we switched over from line power to standby power. So everything's shunted. It's not necessarily for anyone else, like either code reasons or for the state or anywhere. It's just for the CCC. They're required to know when things are happening in the facility.
Now, similarly, so the generator would power the whole facility, I assume. Have you got a separate backup for the security cameras, or is that?
Well, so that's the other thing. So some of the facilities I've done are retail and cultivation together. So that's why I'm saying the CCC asked them to go back and put in generators on the retail space to back up their service.
Okay.
Because they had battery backup. Because the whole cultivation is kicked over on one whole service, I don't think that technically is a standby power for it. It does have a battery backup, but it's sufficiently available to switch over and take the full load as if nothing had happened during the loss.
Okay, I think that's helpful. Mr. Clemens, did that address your questions?
It's a good start.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Could you stand and say your name and address, please?
Amanda Rubens, 304 Reed Street. So we've talked about a lot of things, and I think host community agreement is allowed, right? We talked about what are some of the benefits that the town will get from signing a host community agreement and then coming into business in the town?
I think, Kate, if you don't mind taking that one.
I can try to answer that. Like I said, we try to put a lot of the risk on the marijuana establishments. In drafting these agreements, we ensure compliance by building in, provisions about security, about reporting, and all of those things. But most importantly is the money, the revenue that would be generated. So under the law, the maximum allowable community impact payment that a town can get is 3% of gross sales. And these guys are going to be wholesale sales, so that's it. And if they're doing $10 million of business, someone can try to do that math for me. I don't know.
Jim's our math, he's just
Jim,
really a mathematician.
$300,000 in the first year. And what those impact payments are intended to cover are the unanticipated costs that you may face as a town. So they help, some towns have used the money to do enhanced training for police officers, for detection, for example. And detection is important even for those communities that don't have marijuana establishments allowed in the town. So there are some towns, obviously that have prohibited marijuana completely, but they still have people who grow their own marijuana, smoke their marijuana, or eat their marijuana, and perhaps drive, and so you need to be able to detect it because it's a little more complicated than for alcohol. So that's one thing communities are trying to attack. Other things communities are trying to attack are programs for the schools, for example, to talk about the use of drugs, alcohol, drugs beyond marijuana, and having your kids understand what the risks are and how you shouldn't use drugs and drink alcohol and things when you're not appropriately aged. Other towns have just used the money straight for infrastructure, right? So retailers, for example, you might want to deal with lights, traffic lights or a terrible street or whatever. So there are all kinds of ways you can use the money, and that's completely up to the town when they negotiate that agreement. So money and protection is the value of the host community agreement.
Okay, thank you. Please stand. Please stand.
Yes, please.
Name and address.
Bruce Young, 594 Unit Street, Hanson, West, USA.
Thank you for the last time.
Yeah. On that same vein, are you restricted in any way on how the town uses that money, since you're supposed to show that it's an impact on the host community to back up that 300,000?
So you do need backup, and the backup is all to be documented in the public record.
Right.
But that said, the way you use the money is unrestricted. So if we have $300,000 in costs, and it's the Board of Health, it's the police, it's all these kinds of things that are built into the budget. Maybe I can't necessarily articulate to you right now. I can still take the $300,000 that these folks give me and use it for the schools, even though the schools haven't had any direct cost. Because what happens with the funds is they go into the general fund. And that's actually by law. The legislature was trying to change that. There was a bill that failed in committee, but they were going to create these special funds where the marijuana money would be deposited, sort of like a revolving account, a special reserve account. And that failed, so it goes right into the general fund and is appropriated like any other revenue in the town.
All right, I asked that question only because I read the CCC statement on how that, so the town is supposed to be able to show what it's costing to host this particular establishment.
You're right, Bruce.
You know, so be sure that you can use it for anything, because, I mean, that's basically what I read.
You can use it for anything, but you have to document
Right.
that you've had those costs.
That we have those
So
costs.
if you have
that we want to use it.
$300 in revenue,
Right.
you have $300,000 in costs. You're supposed to be able to document that for sure. Right now, there is no auditor of this, but under the law, you are supposed to be able to document your actual costs.
Cost of hosting.
Yeah, but
of
if
hosting
the dollars
establishment.
don't have to be matching up, and it doesn't come from a revolving account.
I understand.
Meaning, I don't have a dollar that says this is marijuana money and it has to go to marijuana, costs. But I have $300,000 in costs, I have $300,000 in revenue, for sure.
I asked that only because I know what I read, and I'm a detail guy, and the way that I read it is not necessarily the way you interpret it. That's all I have to say.
We disagree a lot, Bruce.
Well, only because I read it and it's there.
Yep, the actual costs of the town have to be able to be documented, and they are public records.
The cost of hosting that
Yes,
establishment.
the
Yes.
unique impacts
Correct.
that this establishment will impose on the town.
Yeah, that's the only point I was trying to make.
That's right, Bruce. I agree with you, so we're not disagreeing.
Okay, we can agree to agree.
Any other questions? Yes, sir, would you mind standing?
60 Stonebridge Drive. As citizens, do we have any input into whether or not we want to host a company growing marijuana?
Can I answer that question? So that's an interesting point too, and it's on host community agreements generally. And so there's a ton of case law on what the executive authority, what the extent of the executive authority of a town is. And if legislation vests a certain decision with a board of selectmen, say, or a city council on the other side, say, it doesn't mean that town meeting, for example, which is where you have your voice, can override that. So, for example, I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with marijuana. Street acceptance, maybe this is a sticky wicket, but street acceptance. Town meeting can vote to accept a street, but in order to do that, the Board of Selectmen has to do a layout hearing, and that's solely within their discretion. So the town meeting can't force a street acceptance to happen because the Board of Selectmen has to make it ready for the town meeting to vote on it. So same thing here. The Board of Selectmen is vested with the authority to do a host community agreement, similar to an intermunicipal agreement. These folks here, these 5 people whom you've elected, have that authority. And it's them who decide. Where you have a lot of input, and for the past 6 town meetings did have input, is at town meeting. And that's when you establish the legislation. You decide whether or not you prohibit marijuana. You decide where to locate marijuana. You decide what types of marijuana businesses you're going to allow. So that's where the residents have a lot of authority, and why everyone's always encouraged to come to town meeting and express their opinion then when the legislation is pending.
Well, I can't understand why we have $300,000 in income and $300,000 in costs, we would ever do it.
Well.
It's a lot of work for
Okay,
nothing.
Sir, is that a question? Because we're not really saying that there's necessarily $300 in costs. I think what Kate is saying is that we could apportion our costs that we already have like highway, fire, et cetera, that we're already paying for, and we could attribute a portion of those to the business.
That's not the way I.
There's a lot of built-in costs that
Yeah.
are maybe
Yep.
difficult to document, for sure.
Yep, our infrastructure costs and the like.
Marguerite Colligan, 60 Stonebridge Drive. If you don't know the costs, why would you do this without knowing if it's worth it?
Ma'am, again, I've jumped the rail. And I'll admit, I'm the one who didn't rail it in when I said.
No, I'm just going off of what the
No, I
discussion
understand,
is.
ma'am. I really do understand what you're asking. I don't know how else to explain it other than how our attorney has already explained it, which is
Well, it wasn't explained.
Well,
the question I asked was, what is do you know the exact cost of hosting this kind of business? You don't. So how do you know if that is worth having? If the income is it will offset and be enough to offset and then have profit in addition?
If it gives you any comfort, one thing I do know is that if the marijuana establishment doesn't site here, you're going to have costs. For example, in the heightened detection training that's going to be required of your police officers, and that is going to occur whether or not a person buys their marijuana in Brockton or whether or not they buy their marijuana.
I understand
in
that, it still doesn't
and all
answer my
that.
question.
So I would suggest to you that there are costs that are inherent in the legalization of marijuana, which happened in 2016 statewide.
That's right, but it was voted down in this town to have retail establishments. Why would you think?
So this isn't a retail
Why would you think that people would want something on a wider scale?
So just to be clear, this is not a retail
I understand
establishment.
that, but it's a wider scale than one retail establishment.
I think she's tried to answer your question. I hear that you're saying that you don't think that it's been answered to your satisfaction, but I am going to ask you to try to stick with at least some semblance of asking questions and not making broad brush statements. Sir.
Paul Benato, 72 Brookside Drive. As far as the host agreement, since none of us has seen it, and you've addressed most of our concerns, but what's the town's expectations for inspectional services like Board of Health, Police, Fire? And secondly, as far as the host agreement goes, some towns have posted it before they signed it. Some towns have also done a open question period. Since we're not really involved as far as that goes, is that going to be the case here?
The board itself has not seen the host agreement yet, so we are planning on discussing it at the 23rd meeting. I guess we could.
But it's a negotiation.
Well,
between
between the attorneys, but the board here, the five of us have not seen the agreement, nor I don't believe Mary has either. So I don't really, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to talk about that. I philosophically don't have a problem with sharing it. I mean, it's should be public knowledge. It's, I don't really have a problem with it. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Have you had any experience with it, or?
It's really at the preference of the town, it's not a secret. And
No,
you
no
can
one's
look
saying
at,
it's a secret.
yeah, and you can look at
Because we're not going to
other,
see it until either it goes in front of the Board
you're
of
anxious
Selectmen.
that you won't
Yeah.
have a chance to review
Yeah.
it prior.
I mean, we could certainly post it with our agenda. I'm not sure what shape it's in. I don't know if you consider it like a final draft or what.
So, I consider it to be primarily, I have to now make some tweaks based on some of your comments because this is the board who decides and your input has been invaluable. So I'll have to make some tweaks based on tonight's discussion, but I can turn it around very quickly with those because, again, I've done a number of these and like any contract you pull from
Yeah.
one and
In the outreach meetings, we made some suggestions, but we don't know what's going to come in the final
Sure.
versions.
Sure.
We just like to see it before it gets signed.
Yeah, and I didn't go to the
Or
outreach
presented.
meeting, so I have no idea. So,
Would it be appropriate for us to discuss this? I mean, we do have the host agreement on the agenda. I don't want to violate open meeting laws by having a conversation with these guys about it, but
you can talk about the process of how you want to disclose the host community agreement.
Okay. Thoughts?
I think that we should look at it and make any changes that we want to make and then release it to them before we sign it.
Once we feel.
Yeah, we release it to them now and then we make changes, we're going back and forth, back and forth.
Okay.
So let us review it, we make any changes before we sign it, and we can release it to the public.
Matt?
To review it.
Two-step process.
Okay. So how will we effectuate that if we're not meeting until the 23rd, and you've got changes you're gonna make now, and we're not gonna actually meet to vote on it until the 23rd?
Yeah.
I don't see how that's gonna work.
Well, unless it just doesn't get signed until the next meeting after that.
Do we have timing constraints on signing it?
No, it's when you're comfortable.
Okay, because we aren't meeting again until,
August 20th.
yeah, August 20th.
So these folks have timing constraints in that they have to, so the process for the CCC application is you file your initial application, and in that application, there has to be a statement that they've done community outreach meeting, which I understand has happened a couple times, and a certification saying that they've executed a host community agreement.
Okay.
So, and then they stand in line behind everyone else who's filed before them. So, I don't know what to say.
Another option would be, we've got the ethics and open meeting law training next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Could we possibly fit in a quick meeting before that? I just don't want to hold the whole, I don't
No, I
want,
agree.
like,
We don't
August
wanna do
20th just seems like it's forever, from here.
And I'm here then anyway.
Yeah. Give you something to do. Are you guys
Yes.
okay with that?
We could meet at 6.
You guys okay?
Before we go into the open, before we do the forum, we can meet at 6. It will just be that one item.
All right, so you'll make the changes, you'll get it to us as soon as possible, we'll review individually, then we'll meet at 6 next week to go over it, and then release it once we agree that it's the final draft. And then we're back on track, we'll meet on the 23rd, and, okay. Okay. Okay, so we will release that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Carol Lukens, 39 Stonebridge. Clarification, this is actually done? I mean, it's not signed, but it sounds as if there's nothing to stop it.
So, well, I don't know what you mean, but I'll tell you what I've done. So, I've negotiated with the attorney back and forth to see.
Their attorney?
Yep, their attorney. I'm the town's attorney, if anyone doesn't know. And I've negotiated back and forth based on what I've seen in the past and what I've done with other communities, and just kind of
For host agreements of this kind?
For host agreements for marijuana establishments. And I've put in all the things that I think are protectionary to the town, for the town, to protect the town, kind of more, I don't want to say boilerplate, because they're important pieces. It's not like the fine print of your, I don't know, cruise ship ticket. But what I think is important, and then what I intended on doing was bringing it to the board to see if there were any particular pieces or areas of concern that the selectmen had that I maybe had not addressed. And if they had additional concerns, I would add those in.
Which is part of why we're talking tonight, to see if there's something that comes up that we.
But a lot of the stuff, like, to sit and go through a meeting for a 10-page contract, which everyone's going to agree to anyway.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to agree to it anyhow. I was at the town meeting, and I remember voting on the retail establishment.
Sure.
Beyond that, I don't remember a discussion about the kinds of things that are being presented now. So I somehow or other, it just went right over my head.
I don't know, there were several town meetings where marijuana was discussed, but I
Or
don't
the
think
most
host
recent
community
one.
agreements were discussed. That's not a topic for town meeting, if that's what you're driving at.
Well, the cultivator, I don't remember hearing about that until very recently.
Oh, yeah, that was a prior town meeting, prior to this past May.
That was a zoning bylaw.
Sir?
Mike McLeod, 27 Highland Terrace. Back in May, when you had your first informational meeting here, there was a few people, and there was a TIF agreement was what was brought up to offer tax incentives. Is that still part of the negotiations, or did that die?
No.
It was never part of the negotiations. That was somebody going AWOL and mentioning that out loud. And it wasn't somebody who was on the TIF committee or has the power to do anything about TIFs. It was just somebody, going AWOL. And I am the chair of the TIF committee. We have not even discussed it with this applicant. We have no intention of discussing it. And even if we did, they're not locating in the zone that we've approved for TIF. So.
Okay, that answers that question. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Joe Campbell, Woodbine Ave. My question is going to be directed toward the engineer, and I want to direct this question toward you and your experience. You said that you've built 16 facilities. Over what tenure?
Sorry?
Over what tenure? How many years?
About 6 years.
About 6 years? So you have some facilities that have gone longer than a 5-year community host agreement.
Yeah.
Of those facilities, of your knowledge, that have gone past that 5-year, have any town gone back and turned down the host agreement and shut the facility down? No. Thank you.
Mr. Young, please keep it brief.
After the 5 years is up on the 3%, you negotiate another percentage, or is the 3% just in? That's my first part of the question. The other one is, if you had a retail recreational marijuana facilities in the town, the state limits that, the town can limit that to 20% of the liquor establishments.
No, so that's not true.
No, I'm saying, I'm asking, does that also apply to cultivators?
So number one, I'll get to the money second, okay? So number one, your statement as to the fact that the legislation provides a limit on retailers of 20% of liquor stores, that's not true, that's inaccurate. So what the legislation provides, there is that language in the legislation, but what it provides is it says that if you want to limit the number of retailers to less than 20%, you have to do a two-prong approach, a bylaw and a ballot, if you're a yes town. So it just provides a different mechanism, but unlike liquor establishments where it's built into the law, a limitation based on the population, there's no limit automatically built into the law for retailers. So that's number one.
I was talking about the cultivators.
Cultivators. There's no express limit on the number of cultivators. The way it's typically limited is through zoning to say cultivators are allowed in this area of town. It's generally your industrial zones or your heavy commercial, because for obvious reasons, right? But so there's a natural limit because availability of space. I have seen other, and we talked about this last time, Bruce, I have seen other communities which limit the actual number, and it's done by bylaw. So that would be, again, a town meeting vote passing legislation.
So it can be done?
Yes.
And even for the cultivators, it would go town meeting and ballot?
No, you could just do that one by bylaw.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And did you get?
And I don't know why they made it different.
The first part of the question on the money after the 5 years, does the 3% lapse? And then
Oh, right, the money. So this is a part of the law that's still a little bit unclear, and I imagine there's going to be litigation on this point, because what the legislation, and I'm not going to get the exact wording, but it says something like this, that all facilities have to have a host community agreement, and that's forever to operate in the town. You need a host community agreement. But what it says is that the community impact payments cease after 5 years. And so what some attorneys have interpreted that to mean is that you can renegotiate a new host community agreement at the end of the 5-year term, which reestablishes and resets that community impact fee payment. What other attorneys have interpreted that to mean is that it sunsets completely because you've already wrapped your arms around the use and you've dealt with the impacts of that particular business. So it's an area that's a little bit gray, and we shall see.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up the discussion. I thank everybody for participating and asking questions.
One more question.
We've really given this quite a bit of time. We're meeting again on the 23rd. You're more than glad to, we'd open it up for you to come at that time. But I want to thank Impressed LLC and everybody else for their questions. We are going to be meeting on the 23rd. As we discussed tonight, we will release the final draft, the hopefully final draft of the host community agreement prior to that meeting so that people can take a look at it. I don't know if you guys had any closing remarks you wanted to make, and then we're going to move on. I'll take a brief recess and then we'll move on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
For like 10 minutes or so.
Paul, good job. That was like a mini marathon. A mini marathon, right?
Depends on how many questions people ask.
Okay.
Okay, we're back, ready?
Forget it. Take too long.
Okay, welcome back to the Hanson Board of Selectmen, Tuesday, July 9th, 2019 meeting. We've just concluded our discussion with Impressed LLC regarding the possible siting of a marijuana cultivator facility at 15 Commercial Way, and we are going to move on to our agenda, which the next item on our new business is an update on McQuon Route 14 rehab and vote retaining wall alternative to boardwalk. And with that, we will, I'm not sure, Deb or Jim, who's speaking, and if you don't mind getting up to the podium.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Fitzgerald from Environmental Partners. So what we want to do tonight is talk about, give you an update on where we are with McQuon, including some of the coordination that's taken place with Mass DOT, specifically having to do with right alongside McQuon Pond. Originally, we had presented two different concepts on how to handle the shared use path that's proposed alongside McQuon. The shared use path is for bike and pedestrian use only, with some separation from the traveled way. And we're dealing with a pinch point right along McQuon Pond. It's about 250 feet or so in length, where we have this real pinch point where the water gets closer to the roadway. Originally, the two concepts that we talked about were the boardwalk alternative and the retaining wall alternative. And what we had originally decided on was the boardwalk, because there was a slight improvement in environmental impacts as far as going over the boardwalk, over the wetland, as opposed to putting in a retaining wall. And we thought it would provide some nice aesthetics, although there would be a little bit more maintenance involved with the boardwalk. It would be quicker for construction and potentially lower in construction costs, although the construction of this project is being funded through Mass DOT, so not necessarily a concern for the town directly. Since that discussion, we worked up some additional concepts and met with Mass DOT in what, as far as our preference for the boardwalk. And what we found through Mass DOT is a bit of a change in attitude at the state level having to do with boardwalks. Now they consider boardwalks to be a bridge. Now that they're considered a bridge, it would be an entirely different situation when it comes to design, as well as what happens after the boardwalk is built. So as a bridge, it's a much more rigorous process. The project goes now through the bridge section of Mass DOT, which is a whole other ballgame, would delay the progression of the project, as well as be a substantial increase in effort, probably about $100,000 more in engineering efforts, if you can believe it, for a 250-foot long boardwalk, which seems a little ridiculous, quite frankly, and not worth it, in our opinion. The other thing is, once the boardwalk is built, it's assigned a bridge number. So now Mass DOT would consider this to be a bridge and would keep an eye on this bridge in the future moving forward. Given that, these changes, in our opinion, it makes much more sense at this point to go back to the retaining wall concept, and because there are more pros in the under the retaining wall than the boardwalk at this point with
Can we
these
circle
recent
back to the
revelations.
absurdity of the bridge thing? I mean,
Agreed.
there's bridges failing all over Massachusetts.
Yes.
And somehow this little 250...
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Believe me, we had a lot of conversations about the same very thing. So it's the area that we're talking about along the pond is not all that significant. So I know this is a little tough to follow, but this blue line is the water, the approximate water line
of McQuon Pond where it gets close to the roadway. The area where the retaining wall would be located, and we're looking at something like a Versalock wall, so something along the lines of a Versalock wall that takes up less of a footprint, therefore less of an impact, would be shown right here. And you can see the hatched area, this narrow little hatched area where that wall would extend into the flagged wetland, although fall right around the approximate water line of the pond. So the hatched area, again, is the flagged wetland area that would be impacted, that would be replicated elsewhere. In the end, again, the retaining wall notion, as we talked about before, would have a bit less on the maintenance as well.
And I don't recall exactly what our vote was on that, but I thought there was quite some debate about it, wasn't there? I mean, so I don't think it was like, yeah, it was almost like 50-50 split, and then I think we kind of were like, well, I mean, I don't think anybody felt extremely passionately one way or the other, but I think
Right.
aesthetically, we kind of were like, I think you did, Mr. Cummings, yeah.
Selectmen
Yeah.
in favor
Oh, was
of
it
the
4-1?
boardwalk.
Yeah.
That might change as of this.
Yeah, I think it was the aesthetic, oh, were you the one?
It was me.
Well, it's good that you own it. Anyway,
I own
you're
it,
owning it, you know.
absolutely. I'm sitting here smug, going. Not just going anyway.
So and
do we
just
have any choice but the retaining wall, honestly, Jim?
Not really,
Okay.
and quite honestly, the aesthetically, a railing would be installed along this wall that would be aesthetically pleasing as well. So
And what's the cost differential for going with the retaining
honestly,
versus
we
the-
have not designed it out or estimated it until we got a firm decision. But it's not a deal breaker when looking at the difference, the scale of this project. It's only 250 feet along the project. It's really not substantial. There are other walls that are required that will be designed as conventional retaining walls when we get further to the top of the hill, where the opposite situation exists. By the pond, the road is higher than the surrounding pond area. Up in this area, the opposite occurs, where the road is lower than the topography on the other side of the roadway here. So up in this area, it's more of a conventional retaining wall to hold back earth. Again, the scale of cost is
So at what point
minor.
will you be able to circle back with us and just give us a sanity check on, this is bigger than a bread box, or?
Well, we will be putting together the 25% preliminary design estimate, construction estimate.
Okay.
And that will be available. We're looking to submit by the end of August to Mass DOT. Before we submit to the state, we submit to the town.
So you just need us to give you the go-ahead to go ahead with that next step to move this forward, because we're at this
With the
stalemate right
with
now.
the retaining wall notion.
Okay, did anybody have any questions or want to make a motion?
Well, I have a couple
Sure.
of quick questions. So as we fill in these wetlands, where are we going to be replicating these wetlands?
So that's one area that we have to dig further into. Is one area that we may consider has to do with the flooding problem that we have further down Route 14, where we're considering as we presented before, we're trying to address the roadway flooding and the high water table. We're talking about including an overflow pipe that would lead into a discharge area that could potentially become some of this replication area for the project as a whole. That's one area that we're looking at, but we would have, as part of the 25% submission, that all ironed out.
All right, and then my second question
In
is
coordination with Concom, of course.
that end of the pond where it kind of curves away from 14.
Yep.
I haven't seen this easement, but as I was talking to people on the terrace today, we were actually talking about easements and whatnot, and they were saying that there's an easement on that corner of the pond more
Over
towards
here?
Woodman Terrace. Correct. Yep.
Yep.
And putting a retaining wall in, is that going to affect that said? I mean, I haven't seen it, so I don't know exactly what the extent is. But I just wanted to
Sure.
say we may want to look into that before building that retaining wall and just seeing what that how that may impact that.
Sure, so the retaining wall is actually well within the town right away.
Okay.
So we're not looking to extend
Okay, I just
private
yeah, I
property,
just
but
wanted to make
definitely
sure.
good thing to know, yes.
Is that what we're calling it now, the terrace?
The terrace,
I was uninitiated in that, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hanlon?
In that same area that George was talking about, the elevation of the road is gonna drop down to take some of the curse out of that hill and that corner. That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
And as I recall, wasn't Highway concerned about the walkway choice as well? And
Correct.
Yeah.
At that location we were, and as soon as it came back that it would be a bridge, we were all for the wall.
Yeah, okay.
Because if it becomes a state bridge, a state numbered bridge, the state will have the ultimate say over it, but they won't fund any money. So they will come in and say, okay, you need to do this because we've changed our regulations.
Sounds
and
like
we have to.
That's the worst of all possible scenarios. And Mr. Clements, you had concerns with it too, right?
Right. From early on, conservation was in favor of the so-called a walkway concept, because bridge to whatever. But because we thought, just as you said, it would destroy less of the shoreline of the pond. And to me, every inch of that pond's shoreline is valuable. It's our greatest resource after the air and the water we drink. And yet, the environmental partners did us the courtesy of visiting the conservation meeting and explaining all this. And we, as far as we know, there are no actual endangered species there. It's not like the last bearded clam or whatever. But what we have is the potential, as Mr. Fitzgerald just explained, to mitigate whatever is lost there, whether it's a 1 to 1.5 or some other ratio that have to be worked out elsewhere as part of this project. Wetland or similar aquatic resource that could be enhanced will be, so as to replace the environmental value of what's lost here. We think of it as probably the equivalent of like a seawall. It won't be the most beautiful part of the shoreline by any means, but it might be necessary and we can recover environmentally by doing a mitigation somewhere else.
Okay, so it's...
I'm ready to move.
Well,
I'd
you
like
were
to
ready to
change my
move
vote.
before we started. I'll entertain a motion. Okay.
Second it, Wes.
You can second too.
No, you second it.
I'm second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reiterate that we'll have the final sign off after with the final rendering.
Yes, this is to allow him to move forward
Sure.
with this design.
All right, great.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Deb, for waiting it out.
Thank you, Deb.
Next up is the town administrator posting. So, as we know, we have the lovely and talented Mary Marini filling in as our interim town administrator. And we need to talk about how we're going to go about filling the actual town administrator posting, because despite all of us begging Mary to stay for the rest of her life, that's just not going to happen. So I think we just kind of want to talk about, obviously we need to post the job. Do you guys want to take another look at the job description, make sure that it's in keeping with what we want to have, knowing that there's certain things that need to be included in there. And then I also kind of would like to open it up and have a little bit of a discussion about how would you like to approach filling that requisition. So in other words, once it's posted and all of that, how do we want to go about whittling down to the candidates that we want to interview? Do we want a committee? Do we want to hire an outside firm, which we've done before? Do we want a group of citizens? Do we want, so that's a lot to take in, but I'm just kind of throwing that up for discussion. So first up, I think, do we agree that we all want to take a look at the town administrator job description and maybe reflect on that and then talk about it at our next meeting?
Yeah, I think one of the things we got to do is increase the salary.
Okay. And did we, by any chance, have, and if we haven't, could we have Clifford and Kenny do a comparative study of salaries?
I had asked them to. I can't access my emails from this computer. I was hoping to get it today. They said they were going to get back to me, but
Yep.
they may have sent it while we were down here, and I haven't seen
Okay.
it, but I have asked them for an analysis on, and comparisons for town.
Because I know, for instance, East Bridgewater posted somebody a couple of weeks ago, and it was for 140, which is less than what we're paying. So.
Is less, which is more than what we're paying.
I'm sorry, I meant we're paying less than they are. So it was a good chunk of a gap too. So that was a little concerning, particularly since it's a very similar town to ours in terms of size and, demographics and all of that. So, all right, so Mary, if we can get that job description to everybody, in the interim also get Jamie to get us that information so we're armed with what we're looking at for comparative salaries for similar towns, towns of similar size and demographics. That would be awesome. In terms of process, the last time that we filled the town administrator position, it's my understanding that we hired a third party who did a preliminary vetting and, combed through, picked out 3 or 4, how many?
3.
I think we interviewed 3.
Yeah, there was 3.
Okay, candidates, and then the Board of Selectmen.
But there was a search committee, so I believe they worked with, and I wasn't part of it, I believe the search committee worked with the outside vendor.
Yeah, there was 3, and then 1 bailed the last minute, and we ultimately had 2 to interview.
Right, okay.
In front of him.
No, we had 3, we interviewed 3.
Was there 3 that night?
Yes, yeah. Mike, another gentleman, and a woman that we interviewed.
Right. How do we feel like that's the process we want to follow again?
It's totally up to the board.
What are your thoughts?
Which way they want to go. Because if we're going to do a search committee, we've got to get it out there. It's going to take a while to create the committee, get them started, get them off the ground.
I don't know about the search committee. I think the company.
Yeah, I like the idea of the company. What I would like is definitely some department head feedback and involvement. I don't know what that looks like, but I just know that I think it's critical for our department heads, who I think have been around the block and back again, to be able to reflect that this is, that they've asked the questions and gotten a comfort level that whoever it is has got a sufficient amount of general information.
Yeah, once you narrow it down to a select few, you can have the department heads interview.
I wouldn't even be opposed, I don't know what this looks like exactly, I'm just kind of throwing it out, but I wouldn't even be opposed to the department heads potentially being part of a selectmen's meeting where we're doing that. I don't know, once it's been narrowed down to like 3 candidates. Do we generally agree like 3 candidates would be about what we want to, look at? I think if we do much more than that, it's we're going to get inundated, kind of overwhelmed with the candidates, and we're not going to be able to differentiate the skill sets.
Right, and that's what, if you're going to go with a firm, that's what a firm will do. You set your parameters, what it is that you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who's actually had 5 years of experience actually doing the job. I mean, that cuts back on a lot of people who may, I can go to Hanson, I'll get started in Hanson and moving on. My personal opinion is, if you want to hear it.
We of course want to hear your opinion.
You need somebody who's done the job before. You can't get somebody who's just, fresh out. Unless they're exceptional. They need to know what the processes are. You're going to have a new person in the executive assistant's position, and finding your way around is going to be difficult if you're just starting out. So, by increasing the salary, you may get some people who have been in other communities, and just through the dynamics of the political environment of decided to go someplace else. But I think the salary has a lot to do with it. But they need to have experience in the field.
Okay, so we're going to get the job description. You guys agree we should do a third-party search company?
I'd like to be a part of the process, though.
I will go with it.
Yeah.
I become so totally cynical. I mean, as Mary and I have said, this is a revolving door.
It really is.
I mean, we have had 0 continuity. I mean, I can count 6 town administrators plus an interim in, I forget, 12 years. It's just been so fast. We keep nobody. I mean, I'm not going to say in public what kind of candidate I'm looking for, but I'm telling you, we have been on the same track over and over. We keep hiring the same basic person.
That's why I'm
And
asking.
they're gone in 2 years.
That's exactly, Wes, why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is the blueprint for what we've been doing to hire working for us?
I'd say clearly it hasn't.
Okay,
But,
so,
but using a service, last time was the first time we've done that.
okay,
Every other time we've created a different type of search committee and done the work. And it's not, I'm not blaming it on the search committees, because like I was with it. But it's what you get for candidates. You know, it's a shallow pool that you're working from.
and do you think that's because of the salary?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. And I mean, we've created our own problem now. They're like, Hanson? How many people have they had in the last so many years? What's going on in Hanson?
Right.
So it's the nature of the beast.
I mean, are we
it's a
calling
tough
this,
business.
is this the same thing as a headhunter? Is that what we're talking
It's a
about?
recruiter, and I have
But it's a
probably
firm,
five or six names that I have gotten out of the Beacon, and I've thrown a search out there. My counterparts in other communities asked if they've worked with anyone for recruiting a town administrator, someone that they've had good working relationship with, and I'm looking for feedback from them. And I did that on my own. I didn't know where you were going to go, but I just wanted to get a jump on it. Not that I don't love you guys, but I don't want to be here forever. So, just to get an idea, some people have said, don't use them. So, I think it's good that we get it. Bring 3 or 4 people, groups in here, get a feel for them, see what you think, and then send them on their
I like
way.
that idea.
I like
we,
that
we,
too.
we can look at, the board can look at the job description, but whoever you decide to take, they'll look at the job description too and say, you may be missing some components of it. The job description is pretty much what we've gone by, is the Town Administrator Act. That pretty much lays out what we're gonna do. If there are additional things under a job description, we can do, but the statute is pretty clear on what we're looking for the town
Obviously, we need
administrator
to keep that core, but I'm just wondering if there's some competencies that don't necessarily, translate, or that aren't in there now,
Right.
that are part of what's contributing to people not being successful in the role. Okay, so we agree, we'll get Mary to get the APB out, she'll get us the contract, the job description to take a look at. We'll get the salary info, we'll just get the ball rolling there. Mr. Campbell, did you have something?
I did, yeah, just for the board's, to question the board, is there any thought given to giving a call out to the second runner-up from the last election? And to point out, you said a small pool in regards to candidates. There were 30 applicants in East Bridgewater. So it was quite a big pool.
So a lot of people apply, but when you say that 30 people apply, I mean, I've seen some of the applicants, and some of the applicants aren't.
No, they're just filling it in on
To give you an
Indeed and
example,
sending it in.
one of them was like a dog
yeah.
walker.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just, yeah, really.
No, just respect
The
the
dog,
dog.
no, dogs are very nice, but it's, they see, well, I can do that job. I'm an administrator. Some people don't even grasp what a town administrator is. Well, I'm an administrator. I can do that. And when you look at the background, so they had 30 applicants, but the.
But it's quantity, not quality.
Municipality time, it's been a very short tenure for the last position, so perhaps that second runner-up who was.
Oh, you mean our second runner-up?
Yeah, for the last.
Yeah, okay, yep.
Yeah, and if they're still around, they will apply.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Okay, great, we don't need to make any motions because we've just kind of discussed it philosophically. Highway surveyor posting. So I think, as you all know, we had, unfortunately, Bob passed away. And we've been fortunate to have Dave Hanlon filling in and at the helm. That said, we do need to go through the process of posting the position, just for transparency's sake and to make sure that we're following protocol. And I don't know, what, is that a job description that we should be looking at? I know stormwater management is particularly important, and has been something that, has gotten a focus. I don't know what the current job description is like, and is that something that that needs to be updated or freshened up, I really don't know.
I will pull it and see what, and
Okay.
I meant to do that, but we were busy in Brockton
Yeah,
today.
yes, we had a few things going on. Anybody have anything, Matt?
It would be great if we could have Labor Council just to do a comparison and look at other job descriptions, salary, just so we're equal with everyone else.
I think we did already ask her for that as well. I don't know why, is she, I don't know if she was tied up today or what, because she's usually incredibly responsive, so, do you mind?
I can ask her.
Yes, okay, great. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Okay. Vote to sign V&A contract.
These are the annual contracts we do with VNA. One is for the Board of Health and the other is for the COA. They come in and they do their like blood pressure clinics and things like that. It's in your packets. If the town administrator signed them in the past, it's just one signature line for the town administrator.
So you just need a vote to have.
Authorize me to sign another contract.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Deb.
Deb. Thanks for coming.
The Gowrie contract, I haven't received that yet. I was getting ahead of myself, just being hopeful. They're the ones that do the police and fire injured on duty. Their contract, I think, is like $2,500. It is an invaluable service. It saves a lot of money from going back and forth to Labor Council when someone's out injured for a period of time. So I don't have it yet, so.
Yeah, I was surprised, you didn't give it to us this year because you don't have it yet, but I remember last year thinking, wow, what a cost savings that is to hire them at the cost that they, and for the service they provide. All right, so TBD, more on that later, I guess we'll,
As soon as I get it, I'll put
Okay.
it, I should have it in the packet for next week,
Okay.
the next meeting.
Next up, vote to sign land planning contract for PCH Park Design.
Do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to?
Sure. Before we came before we being the Plymouth County Reuse Committee, we came before the board and asked for the town to fund an engineer to come in and just do a preliminary engineering plan. Things just didn't work out quite as we hoped, so we've moved on and land planning, we identified land planning as a
It
firm.
didn't work out with our first
With the
firm.
first firm, so we're
Okay.
hoping to get a new firm in there and do just a preliminary engineering plan, just so we can start really visualizing what we want to do up there. So we did the Conway School to do a visionary plan, but that's not quite what we need. We need an engineering plan with scale and everything like that, so we can really start fine tuning what we hope to do up at Plymouth County.
Now, from soup to nuts, if we, which I presume we will, if we, authorize the signing of this, what's the what ETA is land planning giving you for giving like an actual plan?
Yeah, and that was one question that came up at the meeting. It's really, how soon can we turn this contract over, and where do we fit in their schedule? We hope to have this sooner than later because we really want to start doing renderings of what we hope to do up there and really go from there.
Because I'm kind of hoping for something on the October warrant, but that's just me.
Right, well, and that's what we're
Yeah.
hoping too, because there's really only 2 times a year where we can get funding from the town.
Yeah.
And we hope to move sooner than later.
Okay, did anybody have any questions?
I do.
I do.
Yeah,
Oh,
me too.
wow, okay.
Let's get on the line. I'm first
Okay.
now. Did you guys speak to the engineering firm that the town has? So in other words, how did we end up with land planning versus and I don't even know the name of the company.
It's site design, and I had thought about that as well. Mike apparently had already had maybe a call into land planning, so I'm just kind of going with it. And land planning has been working at this site since before we purchased it in 1999. So they have all the data.
Okay.
They have all the plans from subdividing out the houses that were on High Street to the Plymouth County Hospital coming down to the Streeter House. They did. So I felt, since Mike had already supposedly contacted them, that we go to them, and that will save us some money in the background.
Right, okay.
That site design.
That's my only issue, is just that they're generally higher cost than anyone else, generally. But, you know, that makes sense what you said.
But they're gonna stick within the budget that we've allocated, right?
Right, yeah, we're keeping an eye on our budget.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're not just signing away.
Right.
We know what we have to work with.
Yep.
We're working on trying to start centralizing the money from the land sales and everything like that, but just the way that the government moves, we just kind of have to wait on that. So we have an idea of what we're
You're
working
learning
with.
that.
Right. So we have an idea of what we're working with, how much we're expending, and going from there.
Okay, Mr. Bloss.
All right, last page. This rather bothers me, especially since they are a Hanson firm. Expenses, direct expenses shall be billed at cost plus 15%. And then they go on listing transportation and delivery and so forth and so on. You know what? I don't understand. A direct cost is a direct cost. Why are you tacking 15% onto the direct costs? Yeah, I get it, to make a profit. But you know what? We pay for the direct cost. We're paying for their transportation. We're paying for their paper. We're paying for that. Why do we throw a 15% on? That bothers me. That I would ask at least to be addressed. In the
I
end,
bet you if you
maybe
talk
I
to
have
them,
no
they'd talk to them,
pull.
they would probably squash that.
So is that something that
And I'm guessing this is just their regular fee schedule that they give to everyone, but I will give them a call and ask about that.
Okay.
All right.
It's like interest on a bill. The town doesn't pay interest
I know.
on a bill, you know?
Right.
And
Mr.
I had a
Hick-
bill sit for 6 months one time because the guy wouldn't take the $2 in interest off.
Matt, my question is, this is just for the park portion up there.
Right, well, we hope, so right at the moment, nothing is finalized up there of what we're doing.
Right.
This is getting us to the point where we can actually start having a discussion of what can we do with this parcel of property because of the topography? What can we do with this part of the property and start really envisioning what we're doing? So that we haven't made any decisions of it's only going to be a solar field, it's only going to be this, or
Right, and that's my question, is because depending on where they want the park, a solar field in certain parts of that area is not feasible because you're not getting enough energy. But in some areas, it's close to 100%, which could push the park back from where the solar field should go to get maximum usage and push the park back further, which I've heard, you know, on the street, like Wes was talking earlier, he's got street cred on the street, that now the park is pushed back further, and maybe people won't use the park.
well, I think the demand for passive recreation here in the town is on the demand. And I think we as the committee, we're always open to people coming in saying that they would really want a solar field. We haven't had anyone come to our meeting saying that they really want a solar field.
When's your next meeting?
That is to be determined.
Okay.
And I don't believe in your visioning session and in your surveys and all the various different forums, because you guys have really gone the mile of reaching out and seeking community input.
They have.
I don't know that that's come up, but that doesn't mean that people don't want
Well,
it.
right. You know, I mean, in our preliminary engineering plans, we talked about where should we put solar, where is it going to be the best, to kind of start planning around that concept. But, you know, it all depends at the very end, and I'm sure Mr. Clements has something to add to that.
If I may, briefly.
Oh, please.
I remember before the beginning of all this, and when we did our first surveys and our first visioning of what we would do, and this is while the building was still standing there, we put many things on the table, including revenue-generating ideas, including solar field. It was in print, it was handed out at a town meeting several Octobers ago. And I remember the finance committee sort of nodding, and maybe not smiling, but he's nodding, and that's when he came to that part. What has never been done is you never set boundaries of this acre for that acre for the other, as Matt has explained. Topography and other realities are going to dictate this. But some other things have changed since then too. We think the solar industry has changed. There's been other events going on in other parts of town. But what we are determined to do is not lose the fact that people in surveys and in the community visioning sessions and people both from inside of town and outside have made it very clear, as Matt says, there is a huge demand for a basically year-round available passive recreation space. You're not going to get run over by anyone or have to close down when somebody's playing. And we want to respond to those needs. If there can be some revenue generated, I know Mike did talk to a couple of firms. There actually was a visit to the site by a firm who does a lot of things around here, but that was so far back that it probably doesn't count now as an idea. Yet, portions of the site which are more suitable for activity X, activity Y, we wouldn't try to force some other thing in there. We need the engineering services, though, to say what could work here and how much would it cost eventually to build something of this size or this area, this acreage. We are eager to get specific about things. We have been all over the map. We've been thorough. That's the word. We don't want to not explore or listen to any idea. We don't think we've turned any ideas away. But we now start to say the most feasible sounding things. What will they look like? Where will they be? Well, how would an engineer draw up so you can start with costs?
Yeah.
And make plans and then do them.
Did anybody else have any questions? If not, then I
So could we vote on this and then just have Mary give them a call and see if they'll waive, because I do agree with Mr. Boss.
Do you want to take the vote contingent upon you being able to get them to waive the fee?
Yeah, both
Yeah.
authorize me
Okay.
to sign.
Because you can use that in your negotiations.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of having Mary sign that contract predicated upon the ability to waive that additional language that
15%.
15%. Okay, great. Discussion regarding offer of sale of 0 McQuon Street. Mr. Clemens, did you want me to kick it off and you can chime in? Okay. So we, 0 McQuon Street, which you may or may not be familiar with. If you are familiar with Smitty's Bog, which is right next to Camp Kawani, and you walk there, then you know that if you walk through Smitty's Bog, there's a parcel of land that you walk through in order to get to the Pembroke Bog. And then in back of that, there's a piece of property that I always thought was part of Smitty's Bog, and it turned out I was trespassing on these people's property for years, and that is 0 McQuon. It is considered particularly important, I think you call it a crown jewel, piece of the jigsaw puzzle for the property that is, again, Camp Kawani, Smitty's, and then the Pembroke side. And it's on the Bay Circuit Trail, and flows through there. There's vernal pools, et cetera, et cetera. At any rate, right now it is a 61A property, which is got a forestry plan, and the people that own it are looking to potentially sell it. The property has been appraised at a value of $300,000, and they have asked the town if we're interested. They have not invoked the right of first refusal, which they're required to do. So let me back up. If a piece of property is in 61A, then it requires that, as part of the fact that they were getting a cut in taxes, that they come to the town and they show a bona fide purchase and sales agreement to the town saying, we've been offered X amount of money for this particular piece of property, and now, town, you have the right of first refusal. We have not gone down that path with this particular piece of property. Where we're at now is it's been appraised at $300,000. That's what they're asking for. And you might be saying, $300,000 for a piece of property, where are we going to get that money from? And that's where I'll kick it over to the talented Mr. Clemens, who can kind of talk to you about a process that we've already used for another piece of property that the town acquired, not exactly identical to this, but we're going to try to use the same kind of model that we used for funding this. And Mr. Clements, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can kind of explain where we're at.
Sure. Well, as you explained, this is a piece of property which is not very visible because it's quite a ways off the street, but the street is getting closer to it all the time from the Aquan side. There's retreat lots 2 houses deep already along that section of Aquan and actually approaching 3 houses deep. And if they were to sell it for a residential property retreat lot, which is basically how the appraiser gives for about 130 pages of justification for that value, I thought about it and I said, wow, it's a lot of money. But actually, in today's market, for something that attractive, this is what the professional appraisers tell us. But since it is a lot of money, we were thinking, where does that come from? Well, we've solved that problem once before. There's a variety of tools we have, thanks to the fact that we have an open space and recreation plan, which makes us eligible for different state grants. We also have the Community Preservation Act, and we've had it long enough that we've built up reserves, both for general use and also very specific uses, such as open space. Plus, we are aware of several other sources. Conservation itself has a small fund for which money can be spent. And there's at least one other foundation we could apply for. So the strategy is like this, and we discussed this with the owners, so they know that these things take a number of months to actually execute while you cross your fingers about getting grants. The thinking is this: if we apply to the Division of Conservation Services, which is part of Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, if we were successful, we could get reimbursed 64% of the value. That's what happened when we bought the Stone property 6 years ago. And then that would be $192,000. That leaves $108,000. If we were to, let's say, whittle away at that by taking, let's say, $10,000 from our conservation fund, maybe even also seek something from a group called Fields Pond Foundation, which provides funds to buy land to enhance recreational trails. It's all over New England and New York. Let's say we get $10,000 from those sources. Now we're down to $98,000. We could go to the Community Preservation Committee and ask for $98,000 with all this information. We pre-apply, and then if they think that's worthy, then we do a final application. They would bring it to the selectmen, and then it goes to the fall town meeting. Then what you get $192,000 from the state, but you won't know until December whether you get that. You could get $98,000 from CPC if the committee and then the selectmen and town meeting all agree with that. And then the other $10,000 would come from sources that are already in the bank, so to speak.
May I just interject for one moment? I think the important part to kind of tie all of that funding together is it's primarily important to note that none of this would be by additional taxation.
Correct. The math that we've just laid out, the strategy, is such that you will see zero impact. You're not asking to raise and appropriate at a town meeting. You're not going to have your tax rate increase. It will be from resources that we've already got in the bank, courtesy of our Community Preservation Acts, which have, 10 years, through the state grants that, state money's our money coming back to us, but all across the state, towns are applying for this. We applied once before, we were successful. We think this could work again.
And then the article at town meeting would be similar to the Stone property in that the community preservation funding would be contingent upon getting the state grant money.
Yes, what we do is we create options for ourselves. We create the option of spending that CPC money if we're successful with the state grant. We don't commit to fulfill that option, but we lay out the strategy. And because this takes a number of months, and the owners are aware of that. But we have been through this before. It worked rather well. And this is only one parcel. It's not 8 parcels like the other one. So we think some things about it would be actually simpler. But the key, and one reason I know it's on the agenda tonight, is the deadline for the state grant application for this major part of the funding, almost 2/3, is the day after tomorrow. That's why we started working on this last week. And the Wildlands Trust, we didn't mention, they were tremendously helpful 6 years ago, even more so now, because it's the same people, it's a stable team. We know what to do, we're doing it, we've been doing it several days. And there's probably a couple more documents we're going to pull together tomorrow, and the Wildlands Trust will personally deliver our application along with someone else as they're doing, and meet the Thursday deadline. That is the strategy we would like to do.
So you were looking for a motion from the Board of Selectmen to support the Conservation Commission's application to
The Division of Conservation Services Land Grant Program. That would be the biggest piece. It's almost 2/3 of the funding would come from that. But we wouldn't do that if we didn't feel that there was sort of momentum on the part of the public good represented through the selectmen, and then of course the town meeting will have a lot to say about this too. It's an exercise that it's a fair amount of work, but it's easier this time. We've been through it before. We have spent a lot of time and effort over the last few decades keeping our open space and recreation plans up to date so that we would be eligible to apply for this exact type of grant.
Now, Mary, thank you, Mr. Clemens. Can you, I know Lee had, I just want to make sure everybody's got the information, you know, all the information that they could possibly have about it. I know Lee had looked at it from an assessor's perspective, and I don't have that dollar amount in me, but I thought it was 290 something.
It was 230 something.
Okay, so
230,
230, and then,
I don't think I
and
probably
so
did that.
she just wanted to say, like, that's what it's assessed at. So to the extent that that's the taxation that we would get if they flip the use, so they move it out of the 61A into developing it, that it would be assessed at that, and it's a 5-year rollback and would get 5 years worth of taxes. So she just wanted us to know that.
Right.
Now, if all of this fails, if you guys agree that it's, you know, we're gonna give them the go-ahead to apply, you know, to the state for the land grant, work with Wildlands Trust and all that. If all of that fails and we find out that it's failed, what will end up happening is then we'll say to them, we couldn't make it happen. We didn't get the land grant, so therefore CPC, which was contingent upon getting the land grant, isn't going to fund the remainder. So go forth, do what you will with that property. Because it's a 61A, they then still need to go out and get somebody, a bona fide purchase and sales, come back to us and say, okay, one more time with failing, we know you tried the land grant routine and the CPC thing, and that didn't work, but under 61A, we're required to come back out and say to you, hey, you know, we've got a bona fide offer. Do you want to buy it now that we've got, and let's say it's $275 or, you know, whatever, hopefully not more than $300. So we'd yet again have another, I just want to make sure you
But
guys
the answer would be no at
you
that
know,
point, because we know we can't get the funding.
we know we can't get that funding, yeah.
And we certainly would want to hold them up.
We would find other sources, but right now, we're talking about all the sources that we're aware of.
Right.
This is all the feasible sources.
So I just want, we're not necessarily, well, we didn't have this as a vote. I think we just kind of, you just wanted a sensibility about whether there was support.
Well, what it is, it would actually be a sense of appropriateness in proceeding, because some of Mary's administrative time, for example, tomorrow, would be probably putting together a memo saying that, let's say, conservation is authorized to speak to the Division of Conservation Services. You know, no surprises to this board or anyone else. We need to know that in the interest of the town's open space, natural resource, passive recreation planning. And by the way, something we didn't say is that it would represent at least one small place where the sprawl that's taking over all of the Northeast, certainly our town, we will have drawn a line and say we have quality and natural environment between McQuan Pond, Indian Head Pond, the Smitty's Bog, Camp Kiwanee, and so on. We are trying to not lose the last piece of that landscape. Yes, houses must be built and businesses have to exist, but we think this is a good thing. We would want to pursue that rationale and this application with the state, knowing that the selectmen basically agreed. If they didn't, I'd think twice about
I think Mr.
spending all
Lush
this
should
time.
finish his motion.
Were you making a motion?
Yeah, he was.
Well, I was
Yeah,
asking
he'd
if
started one, yeah.
Yeah.
I started, I mean, Phil finished it off with to the Department of Conservation.
Did you get that?
Department of Conservation Services.
Department of Conservation Services.
Okay.
I mean, Mary, do you have the motion then? Do you have-
Well, I started typing when you started talking, so what I put down is support an application of the Conservation Commission to the Department of Conservation Services for grant funding.
Land grant. Put that LAND, all caps. That's a very clever acronym.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
What, so you didn't move, Wes didn't move it? Kenny moved it, I'm sorry.
Moved it.
Many people moved it.
Yeah.
We're just moving things.
I stole his thunder though.
Just keep
Okay.
moving, that's all I ask.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. And I do want to say, Mr. Clements has put in a yeoman's share of work, and as has Scott McFadden at the Wildlands Trust, and we deeply appreciate it.
Thank
Please
you.
let Scott know we appreciate it.
Anticipating this, earlier this evening, we had a called posted meeting of Conservation, also Open Space Committee, to prepare letters of support for this. And this basically means that we're all moving ahead together.
Good.
We'll just do the best we can.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, discussion regarding building maintenance, and we can kick this up the road just a bit in the interest of time, but I'll just kind of give you guys an idea of what we're talking about. We've been getting a number of concerned citizens expressing their dismay at the condition of various buildings and parcels in town, and I think we've got to think about what we're going to do to address this with existing resources, and do we need additional resources, and if so, where could they come from? How are we going to identify priorities? I know this is a lot. My thought is, I've mentioned it before, and I think we generally had discussed it as one of our goals early on in the goal-setting process, is perhaps having a broad Hanson Building Committee, not just narrowed down to the school repair committee, but a group that's going to go around and kind of take a look at the various buildings and say, here's all the stuff that needs to be done, and we're going to prioritize them, and then work with us on getting resources. Matt, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that this really requires that we need a facilities manager for the town.
That's part of the discussion.
And I think that we might need to reorganize some portion of the town to house this member. You know, whether, we had a part-time facilities manager up at Camp Colwani, you know.
That did not really.
Well, he just had to move on for whatever reason.
Yep.
And I think that we need to really make a facilities manager to start looking over our biggest assets in the town.
I agree, because honestly, none of this stuff gets cheaper to address, okay? It just doesn't. You can't keep kicking the can down the road and think it's gonna get cheaper, and it doesn't. And I've been dismayed, and I know a number of you guys have mentioned anecdotally to me about different things that you're concerned about. And again, we've got limited resources. So I think the facilities person is definitely a key. And I think we need to look at who else we have. Yes, ma'am.
And then also too, what I would like to see is I was talking to a couple of people in town, and we all agree that we need a maintenance schedule for all our buildings. All right, time to clean out the gutters this time of year, time to pump the septic, and I think that we really need to start making these plans, but not for plans just to sit on the shelf, but for a facilities manager to be able to pick it up and say, all right, we have to do X, Y,
Right,
and
we've
Z.
got to change the filters this month. We've got to paint, check on the paint on such and such,
Right.
or whatever. Yeah, I 100% agree. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
No, it's
All
just
right.
funding that position, that's the most difficult part.
All right, so what are we doing about the facilities manager? Were you going to include that in your?
Yeah, now,
Okay.
How do you want to handle it? Do you want me to post this? Currently, the way we have it funded is as a service, as a contracted position. And it's not a big deal to move that money from the expense line to a salary line.
You know
If we
what
wanna
my
hire-
thing is? Inherently, I think by having it a service, right, you're going to get a company that's a contractor. And that always means we're going to be low man on the totem pole, because they're going to have a business to run, and there's going to be a bigger, dollar contract that comes up, and we're going to be second banana. So I would really like to have an employee. I don't know what you guys think.
So I had this discussion with the town accountant earlier today. We're just kind of kicking around, what do we need to do? It didn't work out. He was a nice guy, did a good job, brought some things. We finally got the generator, which was part of my report. The generator's just about finished. We have to do the gas. So he got that off the ground for us. But we need somebody who's going to be responsive to us. Right now, it's only a part-time position, 19 hours. So Todd and I thought maybe we should check in with the high school, with the school district, and see. I know they had cutbacks. I don't know who got cut back, but maybe if we could pay for, 19 hours of maybe somebody they let go in that division, we could pick them up. May not necessarily be the same person. That's what we did with IT several years ago when they handled all our IT for us. They just sent us a bill for whatever the amount was for that particular year, and we would get the services that we need. We call somebody, it may not necessarily be the same guy every time, but we may not, need one particular person. How
much is in that line, Mary?
I think we have that funded at 40,000 for that. So we need somebody who's hands-on and can come do things. I don't expect them to be building walls or anything, but some of the general maintenance, you walk around the building saying that piece of siding needs to be replaced, and they can do that.
Yep.
They may not be a plumber, but they will know we need a plumber, or they can do some work that's he can do, but you need.
Matt, just one sec. Yes, go ahead, I think, and talk to them, but my understanding is the majority of maintenance was outsourced years ago, so they have that.
Work.
Yeah.
I don't think it was so much maintenance. And we
Well-
don't need custodial work. I think we need maintenance people.
Okay, I don't think that they laid anybody off, but in
Okay.
that area,
but they, it can't hurt to find out, to see
Yeah.
if there's somebody out there that
He
we
may,
can.
and Artie and those guys may have some insight, Bob and, Jeff may have some insight
Right.
into people that they use, or, or whatever. Yes, Matt?
What I would like to propose, and as I said, I think we need to do some restructuring here in town to make things run more efficiently. But one thing is, we have full-time guys who are truly skilled in what they're doing, mowing grass. They shouldn't be mowing grass. What we should be doing is hiring seasonal help. And I know there's, some other aspects to it, like unions and stuff like that, and we just have to make sure we respect all of it. But nonetheless, we should be hiring seasonal help to cut the lawn. We shouldn't be tying up our full-time guy who could be doing manhole covers to cut lawns or whatever. I think if we could restructure it with some seasonal help for all our properties in the town, not just the buildings, but maybe go out in the trails and do some trail work if they have that time. But then also to hire on a facilities manager as well to, make sure that the overall maintenance schedule is being followed and everything's being followed up on.
I agree. I mean, even Dave Hanlon today was saying, it's tough trying to do all the mowing and everything with a small crew, and you're trying to, fill the potholes and do all the other various things that need to be done. And you're right, like the seasonal help would definitely help to address that. So how do we move this ball forward? So we're not talking about this a year from today. How do we, what do we think the next step is? Definitely look into the, whether there's anybody, from the school district. And I agree, I don't think that we can do it with a part-time position. What does Todd say about funding? Do we have,
funding a full-time facilities manager? Is that what you're looking to do?
I'm looking to explore it.
Yeah, okay, and we can look into that and see what we have for funding. And now we're going beyond the part-time position of 19 hours to a full-time position, which is now going to include all benefits. So things like that.
Understood.
So it's going to.
Yep.
And right now we funded at $40,000. You're looking to pay somebody $80,000 to be a facilities
I
manager.
think you gotta keep it part-time, and you gotta find a retired guy.
Who has background, and to get the people who are doing these tasks, keep them on task and say, this is what you need to do today. Here is the schedule. You need to be painting the trim here, and the gutters need to be cleaned out, and all the other things that Matt has pointed out. In the same thing, we have 2 part-time people up at the library senior center. They work out okay, but then they're concerned when the bad weather comes in. One guy comes in early to get everybody started, and the other guy comes in later in the afternoon. What happens in the middle of the day when it's snowing out, and should the library or the senior center staff be the ones responsible for shoveling the walk and throwing the salt down?
I mean, honestly, it's just
mind-boggling
mind-boggling to me that we don't have a comprehensive town-wide plan for our buildings and for our fields. It just boggles my mind. But that said, that's where we're at. So
It is, and
So
it-
we need to do something to change this up.
Yeah, I think Matt's right. You gotta have a schedule, absolutely have a schedule. But we're not in a position to be able to fund that full-time. There's so much stuff that we gotta deal with. There's changes with the 911 coming up and police. I think you get that, you come up with that schedule you're talking about. You find somebody that's part-time that just retired, the 19 hours, pay them the 40,000, and then revisit it a year or so down the road.
What do you guys think?
We just don't have an extra, you're talking 80,000 to pay
No, you're
somebody.
right, you're right. I
Then
don't wanna take
20,000
on
in
benefits.
benefits and
I don't
stuff.
wanna
It's
take on
like,
benefits.
Yeah, can't
where's
be a
that money
full-time.
coming from?
Even
Can't
if
be
we did a
full-time.
couple part-time, you
Couple
know, if
part-time
that's what we
people.
can
Yeah.
justify, I don't
Yep,
know.
there you
you
go.
know, but
There's a
yeah.
couple parts.
Yeah.
I think we
Even
could do
during
that,
the
John.
department head meeting today, the police chief said, you know, he usually has the prisoners come, but they only have so many, you know, people they can bring out. And he says, can I hire somebody to come do my landscape? The highway guys are right out straight. They're obviously shorthanded.
Yeah.
So I funded enough just to get my lawn mowed because you're right, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
I did get a lawnmower for the town hall, a ride-on lawnmower. It's, Brian had used a ride-on lawnmower for 6 or 7 years, which he patched together that he got up at the transfer station. So we got a lawnmower for the, and we have a staff person who comes here, and I don't want to mow on the lawn. And I told that to Brian. I said, we can't have him out there pushing the mower.
Right.
There are staff people because
So
they're
you
at a
did get the
certain
mower?
age. So I got the mower.
Good.
I said, because we had lost the facilities manager, I had money in the line. I spoke to the the town accountant, and I said, I don't want this to appear to be like Christmas in July, or in June. But we need a lawnmower. I can't have them mowing the side lawn with a 15-inch lawnmower.
No, things were looking rough. It was
right,
getting
it was
a little rough
looking
looking.
tough.
Yeah.
So we got that. So we got that covered, and that will last us a while. But I totally understand what Matt's saying. We've got more important things to do than having our guys mowing the lawn. So we can look into seasonal help for next season
Yep.
and see if there's a way we can budget
Yeah.
that. The thing with seasonal help is they're temporary help. We can't pay them as we pay some of the staff up at the recreation at the Cove. The lifeguards and the beach director, they're true seasonal people because we do not have those positions throughout the rest of the year. Whereas when you hire seasonal people just to do the mowing and stuff, they're still eligible to get unemployment once they're no longer needed
Well,
during
how
that
do we
period of
change
time.
that up?
I don't
We
think
talked to
can.
Jamie about whether we can call it, categorize them differently.
Well, see,
so that we
this
don't-
this is based on what the state allows you to do. When you have to send in a list to the state and say these are our seasonal people, and they actually qualify. If we have people who are doing this outside that 12 or 16 week period, then it's not really seasonal. So the caretakers up at Camp Kewanee are not seasonal. We hire them as temporary for a period of time, but they aren't true seasonal people. So we have those things to look out for. And generally the people you hire for this go off and do something else, anyway. But
Okay,
Yeah,
so what
seasonal
are our
people
next
make it.
steps on this?
well, I can post the facilities manager position as a part-time position
Definitely
and
do
see
that.
where we go. I looked earlier today and I didn't find the job description for that. Mike had put out like an RFP. I will look again and see if I can't find the.
If this person's good, he can help develop the maintenance schedule.
Right,
you know?
right. And this is just true maintenance schedules you're talking
Yes.
about, because we had a survey done maybe 5 years ago of all the buildings saying, these are the things that you need. How much actually happened during that 5 years to improve some of these issues?
Maybe we could dig that up too.
Very
when
little.
you
I
find out.
can
I
pull
agree,
that
Kenny.
out and have them follow that and see where we're at. And Camp Kewanee had, Recreation had done a facility study maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, which was pretty intense.
Yeah.
So they know what they need to do. It's just a matter of getting the people to do the work.
Okay, so if we can post
Mhm.
and then pull that and then plan on talking about it on the 23rd, maybe everybody can mull over what their thoughts are, and in between, we're losing everybody here, they're losing it. They're all looking extremely tired. Okay, on to appointments and resignations, Highway Building Committee. Michael means, I assume that's an appointment, right?
Yes, that's
We
an
po- we
appointment.
posted it, nobody.
I did, nobody, and
Nobody
now
came
there's
forward.
another opening.
I move to appoint
Okay.
Mike Means to the Highway Building Committee.
Second.
All in
Mr.
favor?
Chair?
Oh, yes.
Mike Means had stopped by and chatted with you.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And he's on the highway, he's at the highway department.
Yeah, he's on the.
Well, I just wanted to make sure
No,
we
the
were following that
protocol of the
protocol.
checking in, yep. Good point, Matt. All right, so all in favor? Okay. Bay Circuit Trail Committee request for a waiver of fee at Camp Kawani.
They're just holding a meeting there, right? Like a
12 to 2
12 to
Yeah.
2.
in the afternoon. Yes, so moved.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Anybody second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? We're going to pass over the old business of discuss school building repair membership, other than to say that we believe that we, the committee needs to get together and decide about the future of the committee. I
If
think
not,
we'll
then
just,
we're gonna have to
we'll
make that
just leave it
decision
at
for
that.
them.
Yeah. Next up is vote to sign the administrative professional union contract. And did you guys all have a chance to review that?
Mm-hmm.
Anything of note that we should, that you want to call out to us?
No, other than this is taking way longer than it needed to, and it's ready to go.
Okay.
It was handled by previous Labor Council, it was pretty much ready to go, and then Clifford and Kenny have looked at it, the union's gone through it, and it flows with what the previous Board of Selectmen voted for the memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Town administrators report. Do you have anything left, Mary? You kind of picked your brain along the way here.
We have 2 applications for the police chief's executive assistant. I'll go over those with the chief. Nancy's going to be retiring, I believe, the end of August.
Oh, yeah.
I've posted the executive assistant to the Board of Selectmen's
Yes,
position.
yep.
That is out there. I've gotten a couple of applications in already. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but we've gotten, some feedback. That will be in the Express for 2 weeks. The deadline for that is I think the 26th of July.
And that is not a union position.
No, it is not. No. I had this on there for the last meeting, I think. I think you would ask me about what happened at the Whitman town meeting and how it affects the Hanson. That was just the capital. Whitman voted all the capital except for the roadway repair. So what will happen is we voted to support that. That will just stay in an article, and if they have the money for it in October and they vote for it, then they can go forward with the project. If not, we can either leave it in that line, or we can put it in the school capital stabilization fund.
Do you know how much money that was off the top of your head?
60,000?
Okay, in that ballpark.
40 to 60,
Okay,
I
all right.
think. Yeah. The marijuana grow tour was great today. Don't want to bore
Yeah,
you all,
that
but
was-
it was very enlightening, and I'm really glad Kenny, Laura, and I went. It was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, I mean, so it was Kenny, you, me, Chief Mix, Lieutenant Casey, Chief Thompson, Bob Curran, our building inspector, and then we had the
Chris, the
assistant
assistant
superintendent from water.
superintendent for water.
And,
And Deb.
yeah,
And
and
Deb.
Deb Petty, our planner. So it was a good cross-section of people, which allowed us to have people ask a good cross-section of questions. And for me personally, it really helped me wrap my mind around what we were talking about, what we were looking at,
Absolutely.
and
It just gives us
yeah.
an idea of what these people are trying to accomplish
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I just love the checks and balances, even by the state. And
It's mind-boggling.
everything.
Yeah.
Every single plant and everything has a number, and you can track it. Remember, he said if I sell a candy bar and somebody gets sick, he can go back and trace that candy bar back to the original
Seed,
batch, to
the
the
seed.
actual seed that
Yeah.
started when the plant, and go and pull them. Like it was incredible. It really
I
was.
mean, I do compliance for work, and I've never seen anything this
Everything
mind-boggling
is checks
complex.
and balances.
It was like, yeah,
Because it goes from one process to the next, to the next, to the next.
it was amazing, and I appreciated Bob Curran connected us and helped us
He
get
did
it.
good
So
with that.
it was awesome.
The conflict of interest and open meeting law training is next Tuesday. 2 sessions. I've sent it out to everyone, told everyone, let all your board members know that they need to attend this.
Can we do our other meeting at 6:30 instead of 6?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't posted it yet, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It should not take that long. What's that? No. No, that's just gonna be an open session.
No, that's gonna be open session, because
That's
it's,
for the,
you know,
yeah. The office is gonna be closed next Thursday and Friday. I'm gonna be off. I will see if I can't get my staff person to come in at least in the mornings.
Yeah, all right, you got a staff person, I like that.
Yeah, I know, but you know what? I have not been using her at all because I've been sharing her with the Board of Health, who has been inundated with transfer station stickers. It has been just crazy in here. So
While you're
she's,
on that question, can we find out in another month? I'm curious to see how many people actually bought stickers.
1,200 stickers have been sold as of this evening.
1,200.
But of course, that's not households.
Right.
That's
Right.
number of vehicles.
yes, and I think they can go through and tell you how many are double vehicles, but it has just been really crazy in here.
But I'd be curious, because that's where I was going with this, the comparison of,
well, Kevin had information at the, Kevin Sullivan from FinCom had been pulling it, and he had some information, but Mary had said it's early on, and people.
Right,
right, okay.
It really,
Yeah, we don't have to have this now, but.
it really
just
kicked
do it.
into action, a lot of people.
On that note of the transfer station and the rollout of this, I know we, as the Board of Selectmen, really have no authority over it to an extent. Is there anything that we can do to either, one, support the Board of Health, two, talk about the rollout? Because I'm getting a lot of phone calls about what's going on and why people can't just drop their trash and come on down, because you load up your car. I understand. I understand the struggle. I was one of those people. And, you know, but is there anything that we can do to
I
either
gotta
help
say,
or...
the town hall staff has been subjected to a lot of, angry customers, and I totally understand where they were coming from. We could have done a lot better. And I think posting good signage at the transfer station way back in April, when they decided they were gonna have a sticker fee and they were gonna need new stickers, would have been extremely helpful. At the source where everybody goes, flyers could have been handed out to people, for the last 2 months, saying that you need a new sticker.
But they also could have simply
we're
extended it to Mary and said, you know what, sorry, we didn't get it up.
yeah, a little
Let's
grace,
extend it to September
a grace
1st.
period. So there've been some mistakes, and I think we're over the hump. But it's still it's been tough on a lot of people. And the town clerk's office, I mean, last week she really stepped up and spent most of the week covering, because
Wow.
Teresa was off, and it's somebody made a comment, it's like it takes a village, but we've really tried, and apologies go out to everybody who's been inconvenienced on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, and we try to accommodate everyone any way we can, because originally when they went out with stickers, they weren't accepting cash. So after Mike left, I said, you know what? We're taking cash. If somebody comes in with money in their hand and they want to give it to you, we're taking it.
Yeah, you can write them a receipt.
And send them down to the
As long as
treasurer
we've got the checks and
collector.
balances,
Yes.
But we're getting off topic unless this is part of the town administrator's report.
Actually, it was to thank everybody for all the help with the stickers. So
Okay.
I'm done.
Spending a lot of time on something we have no control over because we weren't asked for the help.
Well,
Rather just move on.
Well, okay, so just to clarify, it is a Board of Health decision, and they own that decision and the rollout and everything else. I think what Matt was saying is just like, how can we help, because we know that things didn't go well.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think the help is going to have to come next time when we go through this process. Right now, everybody at Town Hall is doing their best to accommodate the residents when they come in. Should there have been a grace period? They weren't allowing a grace period, so
No.
people would come
Yeah.
here.
My last request, and then we can move on. Can we put it up, have one of the signs say, "Come grab your dump sticker today," just to remind folks on their way home to stop by Town Hall and grab it for the weekend?
Okay. You
There
mean
was a
the sign out
line, I
front?
mean, I don't know if you experienced this, but there was a line at the dump because the transfer station, because the transfer station employees had to explain to all the people that didn't have their stickers, like, no, sir, I can't let you put your stuff in there, and let's just say they weren't met with open arms and people that were thrilled to see them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and, but along those lines, and yes, we don't have anything to do with that, but where are we with having a discussion with the Board of Health regarding the revolving fund issue and the impending October situation.
I have spoken to Arlene. She was going to be putting out a survey about how many days a week they should be open, and I will check with her and see what the status is. She wanted to see what type of response she gets before we sit down. But it's going to be Arlene, Jim, Kevin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were we missing somebody? No, it was just the
Who's
three of
Jim?
you. Jim Hickey.
Oh, Jim
He had
Hickey, okay.
volunteered to be our
Yeah.
spokesperson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But not tonight
Not-
after this meeting.
Yeah,
It's
no.
definitely not tonight. Not tonight.
Yeah.
just the last thing, the economic development report we should have by the end of July and get moving on that, and that's all I had. In the minutes, we're going to have
That's
to
taken a
table.
while. Can I just say that on the record? It's taken a while. I know it's not you.
No,
I'm
no, I
just
know,
saying.
I know.
Okay.
I know. So the minutes will have to be tabled. I'm still working on those.
Okay, we're gonna go big and then go home. We've got a one-day liquor license for Camp Kawani, and we've got two of them. So I'm not gonna read them out loud because
Yep.
sometimes these are
So
surprises.
moved as printed in the agenda.
Okay. All in favor?
Second.
And
Okay, can I just ask one question about, one of them is the 200th anniversary dinner. Do you want to waive the liquor license fee? Because the fee just comes to us for that. Because if not, I'm going to have to process their bill. It's up to the board if you want to
It would
waive the
seem
fee.
Yeah,
logical
absolutely.
to waive it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
do you guys agree?
Yep, I agree.
All right, so do you need a motion on that?
I'll just put in this motion to approve the one-day liquor licenses and to waive the
You
fee.
want
for
a motion to
adjournment.
adjourn? Skip the
Did
committee
anybody
reports.
have anything compelling, any updates, compelling
No,
updates
never
on the
mind.
committees?
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
All right, fabulous.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thanks,
What, are you
guys.
sleeping? I couldn't get a second out of you?
I was
You
waiting
know
for
what, he's been
Matt.
up since 2 this morning.
He's gonna be up.
Don't